It is now 1 o'clock. We will now start today's public workshop. So first up, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining the public workshop for the informal staff draft of the Sanitary Sewer System General Order. My name is Gergagan Chan, and I am a Water Resource Control Engineer here in the Division of Water Quality's NPDES Wastewater Unit. Today, I have the pleasure of serving as your meeting facilitator, and co-facilitating with me today is Afruz Farsimadat, who I'll introduce in further detail in just a minute. To start off, I want to take the opportunity and extend a warm welcome and thank each of you for finding a way to join us virtually. As we start this public workshop, I'd like to introduce our program staff. Today, we have staff from the Division of Water Quality, the Office of Enforcement, Office of Chief Counsel, and the Los Angeles Regional Water Board, who will either be presenting or working behind the scenes to make this workshop possible. So starting with the Division of Water Quality, as I mentioned, we have Afruz Farsimadat, the Wastewater Permitting Unit Chief, Walter Mobley, the Program Manager for the Sanitary Sewer System General Order, Steve Chung, the Co-Project Manager of the Sanitary Sewer System General Order, and Diana Messina, the Surface Water Permitting Section Chief. I'd also like to put a special acknowledgement for Karen Mogus, who is the Deputy Director of the Division of Water Quality, as well as Phil Crater, the Assistant Deputy Director. And over at the Office of Enforcement, we also have Brian Elder. And from the Office of Chief Counsel, we have Tim Regan and Naomi Rubin. And finally, from the Los Angeles Regional Water Board, we have Russ Colby, who is the Enforcement Chief over there. And then behind the scenes, we also have Ella Golovi, Paul Levy, Tiana Huling, Salvador Chaparro, and our Cal EPA webcasting staff. As a special note, we are hosting this meeting virtually from Sacramento. We welcome and thank you for joining us today and appreciate your participation while many people are concurrently dealing with the continued impacts of the pandemic on our communities. The mission of the water boards is to preserve, enhance, and restore California's water resources for the benefit of both present and future generations. Our boards conduct our work through a public process to strengthen the empowerment of all community voices as we work together to provide clean, safe, and affordable water to all Californians. As background on this project, back in February 2006, the State Water Board adopted the first statewide Sanitary Sewer System General Order for consistent statewide regulation of publicly owned sanitary sewers. Then in 2018, State Water Board staff recognized the need to update the order and have since been conducting outreach throughout California for input on a proposed order reissuance. And then back in February of 2021, State Water Board issued a public notice announcing the availability of the informal staff draft statewide sanitary sewer system general order for the intent of further informal conversation. 2 public workshops for discussion of the draft components were scheduled, with the first one being held today, April 13, 2021, from 1 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. A second workshop will be held later this week on April 16, 2021, from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. The purpose of today's workshop is to provide an overview of the informal draft order and allow interested parties to provide feedback to staff and ask questions. All information provided during this workshop will be available at the Sanitary Sewer Systems Program webpage, in which the URL is displayed on your page right now. This workshop is not for public written comments on the informal staff draft statewide Sanitary Sewer System General Order, however. And then if you look on this slide, we have some meeting guidelines as well as logistics. It should be noted that the workshop is being recorded and webcasted. And as I mentioned earlier, our discussion today is for informational purposes only. No written responses to comments will be provided and no formal action will be taken. We will try our best to respond to all of your questions to the best of staff's abilities. Additionally, this PowerPoint presentation and the recording of the workshop will be posted on the Sanitary Sewer Systems Program webpage following the conclusion of all scheduled workshops. And if you would like to stay updated and involved throughout the process, please sign up for the Lyris email subscription for further updates on the Water Board's website. For these workshops, there are currently two options for viewing and participating. Option 1 is the Cal EPA webcast, which is for viewing and listening in only. Option 2 is a Zoom meeting, which is an interactive platform where you can ask questions and provide feedback. If you are not planning to ask questions or provide feedback, we ask that you view the webcast at video.calepa.ca.gov. For those of you who registered in advance for the Zoom meeting, we will admit you to the meeting, but you will be on mute until it is your turn to speak. Additionally, if you need technical assistance accessing the Zoom meeting or the webcast, please contact Sanitary Sewer at waterboards.ca.gov and enter in the subject line Technical Assistance April 2021 Workshop. Please note this slide as it provides instructions on how to submit questions and comments. Again, we request you utilize the Zoom chat feature to submit questions or feedback. You have the option to ask your question or provide feedback yourself, or have State Water Board staff read your question or comment. If you would like to speak, please type in voice my question prior to submitting your question or comment, and the facilitator will work on unmuting you. Once you have had the opportunity to speak, you will then be muted. If you do not wish to verbally speak, please enter in staff read my question in the Zoom chat box. To answer as many questions as possible, we ask that you are concise and ask your questions within 3 minutes to allow other participants time to speak. If you're having issues with Zoom or the webcast, please send an email to sanitarysewer@waterboards.ca.gov with the subject technical issues, and we can help troubleshoot. We will pull the slide back up once we get to the questions and comments section of this workshop. And here on this slide, you can see the agenda for today's public workshop. Following the conclusion of the introduction and logistics of this workshop, Diana Messina will present the informal staff draft of the Sanitary Sewer System General Order. We will take a quick 15-minute break preceding the presentation, and then continue on with the question and comment session. We will then conclude and end the meeting discussing the next steps for this order process. Please note that future notices concerning further development of this order will be posted on the Sanitary Sewer Overflow Reduction Program webpage at the URL displayed on the slide. Additionally, we recommend that you sign up for the LYRA's email list to get updated email notifications. The LYRA's email form to subscribe to future notices is located below on this slide. And now I'd like to reintroduce Diana Messina, who will be leading us through the informal staff draft of the Sanitary Sewer System General Order. Again, Diana Messina is the Surface Water Permitting Section Chief. Diana, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Gur. Just adjusting my camera. All right, Gur, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Wonderful, thank you for the sound check. So hi, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. We're here to continue our discussion regarding the informal staff draft statewide general order. My name's Diana Messina. I'm the chief over the statewide surface water permitting programs in our Division of Water Quality at the State Water Board. This presentation and the follow-up question and comment period is provided to have a two-way avenue when it comes to communication for all of us to continue sharing our joint knowledge and perspectives during the development of this new order. Next slide, please, Steve. So I'd like to start saying thank you. A specific thank you to the field operators out in the field where the rubber hits the road, as you are protecting our sanitary conditions for all of us. I'd like to also broaden my thank you to everyone that has dedicated time to work with Water Board staff in developing a proposed order reissuance. Next slide. The purpose of today's workshop is to jointly discuss the informal staff draft order that's dated February 2021. Here's the link. As Gur has mentioned, we will be providing this presentation on our website, so there's no reason to have to jot down these links. The existing orders are in place and effective until the effective date of a future board adopted reissuance. Therefore, the 2006 statewide general waste discharge requirements and the 2013 monitoring and reporting program order are still in effect. Next slide, please. Today's overview of the informal draft order will not be a detailed presentation of the document. We are going to walk through the document. We will provide our intention and the background behind the newer requirements. We will explain the organization of the draft order. We will point out some new order elements. And we'll share some discussions that we've already been having with many of you regarding this order, or actually during the development of this order. If you want to have fun, you can count the number of times I say order during this presentation. I want to say that when I say order, I'm referring to this informal draft for the most part. We crafted this presentation to address many of the questions and comments we have received. I see the chat box keeps blinking, and we're going to have a really good discussion after this presentation. So let's get started. Steve, next slide. Okay. There's several objectives for why we are we're looking to reissue the existing order. The first is to update a 15-year-old order. And with that update, we want to clarify the compliance expectations and enhance the enforceability. We also want to clarify that an enrollee must implement an effective, updated sewer system management plan. Additionally, as we address climate change throughout the water boards, through this order, we'd like to address system resiliency at the system-specific level. To address our cost of compliance efforts, we'd like to identify the valuable data and eliminate non-valuable reporting of the existing order and what is needed from when the future order is adopted. And lastly, for this list, is we want to incentivize operator certification. Next slide, thank you. It's important to note that this informal staff draft is subject to change with further order development, so nothing is in stone. The order format is different from the 2006 order. This format is consistent with current water board statewide orders. There's what we call the main portion of the order and a number of attachments. The main portion and the attachments are collectively what's intended to be the enforceable order. This is an order and not a permit. Therefore, please excuse if there's unintentional use of the word permit as we're referring to this document. We're going to maintain one version of this informal draft order as informal feedback is gathered. That does not mean we're listening. We are taking a lot of notes and having a lot of discussions on everything that we're hearing. But we just are not setting forth and changing this version. This will be the fixed informal draft order version during this stage of the development. I'd like to clarify some common concerns that I've been hearing through numerous conversations. There are no proposed requirements in this informal draft to rewrite sewer system management plans. There's no requirements to develop additional or a separate formal asset management plan. And there's no proposed requirements for an enrollee to implement more capital improvement projects beyond the local budget. Next slide. Thank you. All right, so let's start with the organization of the main portion of this informal draft. We start with section 1, titled the introduction. Section 2 is titled Regulatory Coverage and Application Requirements. Section 3 is titled Findings. The findings are the factual basis that the State Water Board finds when they are taking an action to adopt the order. And so after the findings, there's a very important paragraph that starts with, "It is hereby ordered." So during the State Water Board action of adopting an order, for an order like this, the board would be stating, "It is hereby ordered," and then followed with a lot of legal references and so forth. And then it ends with, "The enrollee shall comply with the requirements of the order." So you'll see that paragraph in the informal draft after the findings section. So what that means basically is everything following this paragraph are the requirements of the order. And that is probably where your main focus should be with informal comments and feedback. So then there is section 4, which is titled Spill Prohibitions. Section 5 is titled Specifications. In this specification section, there are the requirements specifically placed on the enrollee. And then section 6, Provisions. The provisions provide the basis of existing enforcement authority and existing discretion factors used by the water boards, as well as other items. Next slide. So now to go over the attachments of the informal draft. Attachment A is a set of definitions in order to clarify the terms that are used throughout the document. Attachment B is titled the Application for Enrollment Form. We have attachment C, the Notice of Termination. Attachment D is the Sewer System Management Plan Required Elements. Attachment E is broken up in 2 parts. The first part is titled Notification, Monitoring, Reporting, and Record Keeping Requirements. And the second part is the summary of the requirements in attachment E1 per spill category and type. I'll go a little bit more into that later in the presentation. And then lastly, we have attachment F, which contains the official regional water board contact information for the required notifications. Next slide. So the first 2 pages of this informal draft document addresses the applicability of the order. I will not be reading this. This is a snipped snapshot of the informal draft. The way we've crafted these first 2 pages is so that anyone can pick up this order and by looking at the first 2 pages can determine if this order is applicable to them or not. So therefore, a person would not have to read into the document to understand if this document pertains to them. Next slide, please. So this document is a set of waste discharge requirements. And per our water code, waste discharge requirements protect waters of the state. Therefore, the informal draft order emphasizes the protection of waters of the state. Waters of the state include surface waters and groundwater. Therefore, waters of the United States are a subset of waters of the state. Section 3, titled Findings, includes a list of the multiple beneficial uses to be protected by this order, which also includes surface and groundwater drinking water supplies. Next slide, please. So there's this new element that we are hearing a lot of feedback on, and that is our proposed regulation of exfiltration. And exfiltration, as we are terming it, is the exiting of sewage from a sewer system underground. We address this in the informal order within the first 2 pages under the definition of a spill. So once again, this is a snapshot of the definition in the first 2 pages of the informal draft. In the spill definition, the second paragraph includes a spill includes underground exfiltration of sewage from a sanitary sewer system through cracks in pipes, misaligned joints, seepage through porous materials, or other means to groundwater, to ground surface, or to a surface water of the state. We know there is a lot of concern from system owners on what this means that we are regulating, we are seeking to regulate exfiltration. What's important in this is footnote number 1, which summarized basically says sewage that does not reach groundwater is not regulated by this order. So what we mean by that is that sewage that would leave a system underground and reach groundwater is what is regulated under this order. Sewage that exits the system underground but is contained either in the pipeline trench or in the surrounding soil matrix and does not make its way to groundwater is outside the scope of this order and is not regulated by this order. Okay, next slide, please. So now we're going to kind of include some details about the individual sections. So section 1 is the introduction to the order. This section provides the introductory text of the State Water Board's intent of updating the 2006 order by implementing current regulations, policies, and resolutions. This section includes the Water Board's compliance expectations for enrollees to proactively prevent spills and eliminate discharges, to implement an effective updated sewer system management plan, and to track and improve their own sewer system performance. Next slide. Section 2 is titled Regulatory Coverage and Application Requirements. This section implements a streamlined electronic acceptance in CWICS for continuation of existing coverage to the new order. So we currently have over 1,100 enrollees in the 2006 or under the 2006 order. We do not want over 1,100 applications. Basically, our staff is working in CWICS to allow for an existing enrollee to go into our statewide database and electronically certify under penalty of perjury request to have the existing enrollment transferred to a new order. So this is one area where we're looking not only to make it easy, but not to take a lot of time and expense from our existing enrollees to transfer coverage. This section also provides the administrative procedures for new applicants and for transfer of regulatory coverage. Next slide. All right, section 3, findings. This section is somewhat lengthy. This section provides the factual basis and the context for the order, including existing legal authorities through federal and state regulation, sewage spill threats to public health and beneficial uses of our waters, applicable water quality control plans, policies, and regulations, and resolutions. And for example, we are implementing through our work here, our existing cost of compliance resolution, our sources of drinking water policy, and our water board's response to climate change, as well as other resolutions listed in our findings section and so forth. I also like to note that when we state water quality control plans, that includes the basin plans of our 9 regional water quality control boards. Then the findings also includes information on existing funding and technical assistance programs that we have through our Division of Financial Assistance here at the State Water Board. Next slide. Section 4 is the prohibitions, and we are informally proposing 3 spill prohibitions. The first is any spill of sewage from a sanitary sewer system is prohibited. The second is any discharge of untreated or partially treated sewage of to waters of the state is prohibited. And the third is any discharge of untreated or partially treated sewage that creates a nuisance as defined in the water code. Next slide, please. Right. Thanks. This is a little break slide that I included because we're ready to go into a fairly large section, which is section 5, specifications. Again, specifications are requirements that are specifically placed on the enrollee. This presentation includes only an overview of the new informally drafted requirements. And for a matter of time, it doesn't go through the detail, but we're happy to address any questions or comments during this workshop and any other future informal meetings we have. Next slide, please. Right. So the first the first section I'd like to touch on is section 5.3 of the specifications, which is titled Proactive System Resiliency. I'd like to share our intent here on what you see in the informal draft. We are intending to expand 2 findings in the 2006 order that address resiliency. The first is finding number 3 of our existing 2006 order, and I'll read the existing text. A proactive approach that requires enrollees to ensure a system-wide operation, maintenance, and management plan is in place will reduce the number and frequency of sanitary sewer overflows within the state. This approach will in turn decrease the risk to human health and the environment caused by sanitary sewer overflows. And we went in and bolded the words proactive and decrease the risk, just to make note of that. The second Finding in the existing order, we are intending to expand for system resiliency purposes. Reads, develop a rehabilitation and replacement plan to identify and prioritize system deficiencies and implement short-term and long-term rehabilitation actions to address each deficiency. And once again, we went back in just to highlight the words identify and prioritize and short-term and long-term actions, as these are key terms that we use in our informally drafted requirements for system resiliency. Next slide, please. Okay, so with this slide, I'm intending to address some comments we received in which it's important to acknowledge all the work that has been done by municipalities and sanitation agencies and municipalities. Sanitation agencies are a subset of municipalities. Someone can correct me on that if necessary. So what we're looking at here is the success that we have achieved as a state since the adoption of the 2006 statewide order. In this graph in orange, the orange line depicts the total number of spills per that indicated year, and the blue line depicts the total spill volume per that year. This is data from our SWRCB database. That's our statewide database that takes in all the spill reporting information. So as the board adopted the first statewide order in 2006, it took a couple years to start getting enrollees involved in the order and reporting and to kind of get the process rolling. So I'd like to point out in this graph, the year of 2010. And that's basically where we'd like to start looking at a lot of the progress being made here. So by the year 2010, we've already started seeing a decrease in the number of spills. Per the graph, we see we started with over 6,000. The number of spills steadily decreases as you go through the years and the decade, all the way to 2019, which is the last complete reporting year that we pulled the data. And so that is a success where we see that spills, the number of spills throughout the state has been reduced to less than 3,000. And again, the numbers here are as good as the quality of the data that is in our database. When we look at spill volume, the spill volume still goes up and down, and we can look at specific years that we've had wet weather, we see volume go up. When we have drought years, we see the volume go down. What I'd like to conclude from this slide is that there have been a lot of public system owners that have put effective procedures, O&M measures, and other local program elements in place that successfully reduce the number of spills. And we have been doing a lot of talking with agencies, operators, consultants, wanting to know what did that take to achieve these results. Because with our next version of the order, we'd like to address what we see on the right side of this graph, which is that we still have spills taking place and we still have significant volume of sewage spilled out in our environment. So, so with this, I'm going to then further go over our system resiliency requirements. Next slide, please. All right, so back to subsection 5.3 of the specifications, which is titled Proactive System Resiliency. The specifications require the enrollee to include procedures in the next sewer system management plan update that address identifying high risk and high priority sewer system and program areas. So again, you see the same terms, risk, priority, and so forth as in the 2006 order. The specifications also require the enrollee to implement updated risk and prioritization related corrective actions to prevent future spills. Subsection 5.3.1 limits this requirement for disadvantaged communities to a one-time plan update that includes the risk and prioritization related procedures. Our objective here is to continue reducing the statewide number of spills and the total volume of sewage spilled through proactive measures that the proactive enrollees out there have been implementing. Next slide, please. So the next subsection in the specifications portion is section 5.5, which is titled Legally Responsible Officials. The current 2006 order requires an enrollee's legally responsible official to legally certify under penalty of perjury its regulatory coverage actions such as applications, transfer, termination, etc. Its sewer system management plan and updates, and its individual spill reports. The specifications are modified in the informal draft to require the legally responsible official to have responsibility over operation and maintenance, operation or management of the enrollee's entire sanitary sewer system. The modification also includes that the legally responsible official is to hold a professional engineer registration or be a certified collection system operator and hold that registration, that certification. Next slide, please. All right, the next section I will touch on is section 5.10 of the specifications, titled System Performance Analysis. This section requires the enrollee to track and annually report its own system's 10-year performance analysis. That includes 2 line graphs. The first graph shows the annual number of spills. So that's the total number of spills that took place from that system for each year. The second is the annual volume spilled for each year. And again, these graphs are for a running 10-year period from the existing reporting year that the graph is being submitted for. Next slide, please. You know what? Let me go back up to the previous slide. Okay. We have questions on why we are requiring this. It's standard for a lot of our water board regulatory permits and orders in which either the permittee, the discharger, or the enrollee reports their compliance to the water board. So we have heard comments on why can't staff just go into CWICS if they have concern about a system and do this quick and easy analysis themselves. The intention behind this is the first, to be consistent with other orders, and the second is for the enrollee to actually keep track of their progress, or maybe of procedures that may, to notice procedures that may not be actually producing an effective outcome. All right, next slide, please. Section 5.14 of the specifications is a little different, or we have a little different purpose for this. This section is titled Electronic Boundary Maps. This section requires submittal of electronic sewer service boundary maps. And that submittal is to be within 12 months of the adoption date of the order or within 6 months of new enrollments. The information is to include the public water system identification number for the drinking water systems within the boundary, and also include the waste discharge identification number for the treatment plant that serves the sewer system or systems in the boundary. This information is not for compliance purposes of the enrollee. This information is for our water board's collective identification of areas throughout the state that are not served by sewer systems, as our water boards continue to address interrelated drinking water and wastewater regulatory issues. Next slide, please. Sections 5.15 and 5.16 in the specifications address the notification of spills from private laterals or private systems. These sections require the enrollee, the first section, 5.15, requires the enrollee to notify the Regional Water Board of observed spills from privately owned laterals or systems. And those are spills of 1,000 gallons or greater, or any size spill that is discharging to a water of the state. So that is a new requirement. Section 5.16 encourages an enrollee to notify the California Office of Emergency Services, or Cal-OES, of a spill of 1,000 gallons or greater that has the potential to discharge to a water of the state. This section clarifies that it's the system owner that holds the responsibility to contact Cal-OES. Therefore, this second section only encourages any reporting to Cal-OES from an enrollee that's not the owner. The objective here is to have immediate attention on occurring spills out in the field that are threatening our waters, so that efforts can be made to stop those spills and to clean up the any damage or any impact. Next slide, please. All right, section 5.17 of the specifications is titled Annual Report. This section converts the existing questionnaire in the 2006 order to an annual report. This is consistent with other water board orders for compliance determination purposes. And we are working with our SWRCB programming staff to have a proposed one-time entry of the content in SWRCB, similar to the questionnaire content. And then the enrollee would only have to go back into the system for an annual update of the information that changed during that year. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. This is a pretty busy slide here. To start, I'd like to address that we are proposing to modify the spill categories, and the main objective for this modification is to address reduced reporting. Section 5.13 of the specifications includes the category of spills. And there are 4 categories now. The first category, category 1, is all spills to a water of the United States. Category 2 is spills of, this should actually read 1,000 gallons or greater, that doesn't reach a water of the United States. It's not a category 1. Category 3 are spills that are of 50 gallons to 999 gallons. And the new category 4 are spills of less than 50 gallons. In section 5.20 of the informal draft, we are providing incentive-based reduced reporting. This is the purpose for the category 4 spills. This section allows an enrollee to maintain the spill record for their less than 50 gallon spills on site if they meet this following criteria. If for 5 years they have less than 2 spills per 100 miles of system per year, if their total individual spill volume does not exceed 1,000 gallons, if there's no category 1 spills, and if the enrollee maintains at least 50% of their field staff as certified operators. This is an area that when I was asked by a CASA, by a CASA representative, if there's room to change, there's definitely room to change for this criteria. I do want to express, however, there's also concern that a spill that is less than 50 gallons may still pose a threat to water quality, or still may pose a nuisance, even though relatively it is of smaller size. It depends on the spill and the location. Next slide, please. So we just finished going through section 5, which is specifications. So now we're on to section 6, which is provisions. So the provisions are legal, contain the legal reference and information for purposes of implementation and enforcement of this order. Next slide, please. So this section, section 6, provides the legal reference for existing Water Board Enforcement Authority, which includes the reference to our California Water Code, and our California Water Code includes our Porter Cologne Act. So these are state regulations. The section also provides legal reference to the Clean Water Act, which is the set of federal regulations for protections of waters of the United States. This section provides information on existing regional water board enforcement discretion factors, and those are the factors that our regional water boards currently consider as they evaluate their potential enforcement actions. And this section also provides information regarding regional water board authority to order more stringent requirements either within their region under the regional water board authority or to specific enrollees within their regional water board authority or within their region. Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so now we're on to the attachments. The first 3 attachments are attachment A, B, and C. Attachment A is titled Definitions, and this attachment defines the key terms for clarification and compliance consistency as this order is implemented. Attachment B is titled Application for Enrollment, and this attachment includes the administrative application form and procedures for new applicants. Attachment C is titled Notice of Termination, and this is the administrative form to terminate coverage under the order. Next slide, please. All right, so here we are, attachment D, and this is a large attachment. So attachment D is titled Sewer System Management Plan Required Elements. This attachment provides details to clarify water board compliance expectations for the individual sewer system management plan. The attachment includes the required elements to be addressed in the individual plan and defines the plan as a living planning document that documents local program elements and procedures, local decision-making protocols, system resiliency assessments, and prioritized remediation actions, and procedures for continued plan updates. Next slide, please. The introduction paragraph to this attachment explains that if an existing sewer system management plan already includes any new elements required, that the enrollee is in compliance with the plan requirements. So basically, that is checked off. The introduction paragraph also explains that if a requirement in this attachment is not applicable to a specific system or a specific enrollee, that the plan must explain why it's not applicable. So again, important to note, there's no requirement here to rewrite a sewer system management plan. And if a sewer system management plan already contains any of the newer elements, then you can check those items off. Next slide, please. Okay, so in section 4.2 of attachment D, this section is titled Interagency Coordination and Collaboration. In this section requires established protocol for coordination and collaboration with the local stormwater agencies for coordinated spill and emergency response and cleanup, and collaboration with local drinking water agencies for planned protection of surface and groundwater drinking water intakes to protect them from spills. We'd like to hear more feedback on this. We understand this may be somewhat difficult. The intention that we have as staff behind this requirement is that we know when we have sewer spills that many times there is a nearby storm drain grate and the spills end up in the storm drain. And it is critical that the enrollee stops the flow of that spill in the drainage conveyance system as quickly as possible. And it is also critical that the sewage in the storm drain infrastructure is cleaned up so that there is no remaining sewage debris settled in the drainage system to be later discharged. So that's our intention behind that first bullet. When it comes to collaborating with local drinking water agencies, when our intention here is when looking at different system areas and looking at risk, even more specifically, what would be the consequence of a spill in that area? We believe it's important to take in account where the drinking water system for that serving that community is actually intaking its water, and that sewage does not make its way to that source of drinking water. Next slide, please. Okay, so now I'm going to touch on section 7 of attachment D, which is titled System Resiliency. In many of our conversations with a lot of interested parties in the last couple years, we talked asset management, we talked climate change impacts, and so forth. We've arrived to the term system resiliency. So as we address system resiliency, this is kind of the umbrella to address climate change impacts, which are very unique to the location of the system, population gain, population decrease, and other conditions around the system or other events taking place, natural events taking place in the area of the system that could be impacting the resiliency of that system to perform. So as we address system resiliency, we look at the existing 2006 order and we identify that the existing condition assessment requirements and the existing capacity assessment requirements for the systems are actually the key parts when it comes to system resiliency. We took that existing language and we clarified it. Many people may see this as we expanded it, but we have clarified or expanded it per the Water Board's compliance expectations of what a condition assessment or what a capacity assessment should include. Then we inserted section 7.3, which is titled Risk Assessment. And this section requires procedures in the sewer system management plan for assessing risk of system deficiencies that are identified in the condition assessment and the capacity assessment. After that, we have section 7.4, which addresses remedial prioritization. This section requires procedures for the prioritization of short-term and long-term remediation actions, addressing the higher risk system and program areas that were identified in the risk assessment. And that's followed by section 7.5, titled System Resiliency Actions. This section requires the incorporation of the resulting prioritization into the existing operation and maintenance procedures and incorporate that prioritization into the implementation order of the capital improvement projects that are to be implemented. And this is to address the high risk system elements first. So hopefully you can see kind of a flow on how each subsequent subsection takes on the information of the previous section and builds on that. Next slide, please. Okay. Section 11 of Attachment D is titled Local System Program Budget and Resources. In this section, we are asking that the sewer system management plan provide a detailed description of the local resources that are dedicated to the sanitary sewer system and the local program. Also, the local resources needed to implement an updated effective sewer system management plan and operate an effective local program. We recognize that there are different situations for if the system owner is a public agency, and if that agency is a sanitation agency or a special district in which its boards and its fees and its local resources are dedicated to the locals, to the sewer system or to the local management program. Where differently, if the public ownership of the sewer system is a city or a county, that the local resources needs to be split and may not all go, or a big portion may not go to the sanitary sewers. There's a sharing among all the other utilities that the municipality must fund. This is an area that we, as staff, we believe is deficient in the 2006 order. It does not provide enough information to our regional boards when determining if the purpose for spills taking place from a system may be that there is not enough local resources dedicated to the system. So that is the intent behind that part of the section. Section 11 also requires that the sewer system management plan provides a description of the local program's accounting mechanisms and procedures, the auditing procedures that evaluates the revenues and the expenditures, as well as the financial and accounting program procedures. Next slide, please. Now, this is the last section I'm touching on in attachment D, which is section 16, titled Adaptive Management. And that's exactly what it is. This section requires that the sewer system management plan provides a detailed narrative on how the plan has been updated to reflect ongoing system resiliency through system and program modifications. Next slide, please. All right, so on to another very large section, which is attachment E. Attachment E is to replace the existing notification, monitoring, reporting, and record keeping requirements that are in both the 2006 order and the 2013 monitoring and reporting program order, and to place them all in one attachment. It would take me several hours to go through attachment E1. I know that there are a lot of comments and questions about the contents of E1. I'm going to do a very cursory overview here and basically state that our intention on this informal draft order is to clarify the purpose of the different requirements and the overall definition of what the requirements actually asking for. So when it comes to notification, we mean notifying Cal OES and or a regional water board of a spill. When it comes to monitoring, that is gathering of information. That gathering of information is categorized either as visual observations, field monitoring with handheld equipment, or water quality sampling with laboratory analysis. When it within our visual observations that we informally propose, that is where we have the estimation of a spill volume. And we've also included other information which our inspection staff and our enforcement staff believe is valuable, such as photographs, such as information that better describes the extent of the spill. Under field monitoring, this is where we hope that any water quality information or conditions, information on the conditions can be used, as this is more economical for an enrollee to do this monitoring with handheld equipment. And then there's the more expensive water quality sampling and lab analysis. That is the same as in the 2006 order for when it must be conducted, which is for spills greater than 50,000 gallons to a water of the United States. However, the water quality sampling has been updated to include our current environmental laboratory accreditation program requirements, as well as other information that may be needed to assess if the beneficial uses of a water of the US has been impacted. Then there's reporting. And the reporting is the reporting of information to the water boards, such as in CWICS. And reporting is of the monitoring results or reporting of plans or reporting of reports, and which includes individual spill reports. Then there's the record keeping, and record keeping is the maintaining of information. I'm sorry, the Zoom window keeps popping up. You guys are adding a lot of stuff. I couldn't see my slide. Okay, the maintaining information in the enrollee's possession, and that is information that needs to be made available per the request of a water board staff. Next slide, please. All right. The second part of attachment E is fairly short and includes a summary of the requirements of attachment E1 and is organized per spill categories and also spill types. So our intent of creating this attachment is to have an easy reference for an operator or any other professional out there that needs to target what are their notification and monitoring requirements and reporting requirements as any certain category spill may be taking place. So with that, this attachment contains 5 tables. The first table is the summarized requirements and references to the section in attachment E1 for category 1 spills. And then accordingly, the second table is for category 2 spills. Third table is for category 3 and 4 spills. The fourth table is for the reporting of spills from private laterals or private systems. And then the fifth is a summary of the actions, the record keeping actions that need to take place if you are one of the enrollees that has the approval for reduced reporting. Right, next slide, please. Lastly, the last attachment we have in our current informal draft is attachment F, and this is titled Regional Water Board Contacts. This attachment includes the official office email address of the different regional boards for the official notification of a regional board for any notification requirements within the order. Next slide, please. So that is my overview of the informal draft. As we continue developing this draft, the staff contacts are Afruz Farsimidin. Afruz is our statewide permitting program manager. Walter Mobley. Walter is our lead project manager. And Steve Chung. Steve is our co-project manager, and they can be contacted through these email addresses. That is the end of my staff presentation. I acknowledge it is a high-level overview, and we are happy to go into further detail during our question and comments time period. Gur?
Alrighty, thank you, Diana, for that very informative presentation. In a few minutes, we'll be taking a short break where folks will have the opportunity to ask questions and provide feedback on the presentation. But before we go on break, just a couple of reminders as we enter the question and comments session. If you haven't already been doing so, please submit your questions or feedback through the Zoom chat box and indicate whether you would like to ask your question or provide feedback yourself, or if you would like State Water Board staff to read it for you. Additionally, I see that we do have a lot of participants and a lot of questions and feedback has been coming through the chat. And so if you can change your Zoom profile name to your full name, that would make this entire process very efficient. I believe the way you can do that is if you hover over your name in Zoom, there should be an option to rename it. And then additionally, if you have any questions, technical assistance that you need through with Zoom or the webcast, feel free to send an email to sanitarysewer@waterboards.ca.gov. Next slide. So now we'll be taking a 15-minute break. We're a little bit ahead of schedule by 5 minutes, so we shall resume around 2:25. We'll update the slide. There you go, to reflect that. All right, thank you, and see you soon. All right, it is 2:25. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully everyone got a chance to go for a quick stretch, go for a bio break, get a glass of water or a quick snack. We will now be beginning our question and comment session. You are more than welcome to continue sending us your questions, and we will try our best to answer as many as possible. As a reminder, instructions for submitting questions or for technical support with Zoom or the webcast are on this PowerPoint slide. We will keep the slide up during the question and comment session. I also request that for those of you who wish to voice your question or comment, if you can be concise and keep your talking time to about 3 minutes, just so that we have enough time to get through all the questions and feedback that is being received. Additionally, the question and comment session will last around 4:20-ish, so that we have enough time to wrap things up and go over the next steps. So it gives us about a little less than 2 hours to go through the session. And with that, I'll turn it over to Walter Mobley, who will be moderating the question and comment session.
Thank you, Gur. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. And thank you all for your questions. I have organized the questions, and some of you have asked multiple questions throughout the chat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with the questions that interested parties ask that staff read, and then take time after I read the questions and they're answered to have everyone who would like to voice their question at that time. I will go in the order in which the questions were received. And so just bear with us, because we do have quite a bit of questions, which is good. It's going to make for great conversation. In addition, if I mess up on your name, my apologies ahead of time for that. So let's go ahead to our first question, which comes from James McPherson. Says that interested in knowing what the definition of competency is as it relates to its use in the draft WDR.
Hi, Walter. This is Diana. Would you like me to answer that? Okay, very good. So thank you for that question. This is one of the reasons we put in attachment A of definitions. We, though, I think need to limit how many terms we put in there. But competency basically means just being able and successful in whatever role individual or professional has for an enrollee in complying with this order.
Okay, and to follow up with that, James McPherson states that Section 5.5, the designation of a legally responsible official, reflects have the LRO having a PE or a grade 3 or above. Neither of these programs specially address LRO or overflows in depth. How would you ensure they have the knowledge and skill to act as a competent LRO?
Very good. That is why in the informal draft, we also included that portion that states that they need to have knowledge of the system. And I guess one of the things I should do is pull up the informal draft. But on my slide, I included that. So that is, we're looking at it as a package. Professional engineer or certified operator that has knowledge and expertise of the system. And I can go back and look at that.
Thank you, Diane.
That answers the question.
All right, our next question comes from Bill C. It says, what are options for systems that cannot meet proposed legally responsible official qualifications? Small systems with minimal, if any, SSO history.
All right, so that's basically where we need to continue working on this section for the legally responsible official, because we cannot leave any enrollee out. However, there is also an option on if the requirements in this order include a person that a small disadvantaged community does not have. Maybe there's an option of contracting with a neighboring agency that does have such a professional on board.
Thank you, Diana. And to back up that comment, in our chat box, we have some comments associated with that. And Paul Kazi states, staff, does state understand that it can take 3 years to become an operator 3, a grade 3 operator?
Yes, we understand that, especially with the California Water Environment Association program, that it's a very vigorous program. I also do want to say that we're having direct conversations with the California Water Environment Association staff on looking at if that criteria should remain a grade 3, or maybe that criteria should be a grade 2. And other important information to consider regarding certification. Now, before I move on, just Walter, I see hands flashing up. Or Gergagen, do folks have the option to raise their hand, or can you please speak to that just to make sure that folks know?
Yes, folks should have the option to raise their hand, but I think just for the sake of time, we will ask that folks who want to verbally speak out, just wait until the end once we get through the questions that Walter is asking, in which folks wanted staff to read it out.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Another question associated with training purposes. Give me one moment here.
Sure.
So we have Miguel Guerrero. It says, the question is, the WDRs are very confusing and agencies will be subject to enforcement based upon their interpretation of WDRs. Will the state be providing additional guidance and training to ensure compliance with the new WDRs? For example, the definition of spill includes underground infiltration of sewage from a sanitary sewer. Since the pipes are underground, how do you determine the start time of a spill? Calculate the volume or determine if it reached groundwater. Also, if the pipe is located in a difficult access area, the spill can continue for months to years before it can be repaired.
Okay, very good. So there's several things there. To start with, when it comes to training and explanation, absolutely. The State Water Board is in partnership with the California Water Environment Association, in which that's CWEA, and CWEA provides regular workshops and training events specifically for the statewide waste discharge requirements. So with that, yes, we will be continuing to work with CWEA and be part of those trainings. The second question is about exfiltration, and I'm going to restate the question. Hopefully I capture it. It's basically, how do you even know if you're losing sewage underground? And if you do know, how do you know if it's even making its way to groundwater? So We take baby steps, and we always propose baby steps, especially with such issues such as exfiltration. So at this time, we are informally proposing to regulate it through a spill prohibition, but we do not intend to include any kind of monitoring of groundwater. That is just unfeasible and unreasonable. When it comes to exfiltration, the requirements are there for if or when, through the condition assessments, through videoing of your system, you find that there is an infrastructure deficiency there, that you are losing sewage. If that's the case, then maybe you may look for other signs. You may also want to look into how deep is the groundwater, what type of soil do you have? Would you have any suspicion of whether it's drips going out of the system? The answer may be no. If you have a huge corroded gap or misjoint pipes in your system, and you're losing a lot of sewage, I would most probably say that you would want to look at where is that sewage going to. So with that, we're not asking in this order for start time, end time of exfiltration. If you do find it and you do see that's reaching groundwater, or it's finding its way back to the surface, we do ask for the reporting of when you found that, when you first observed that you're losing it, and so forth.
Thank you, Diana. And I think that speaks to a question from Brian Kuhn, which says, when there is an SSO on soil, are enrollees required to determine groundwater depth in order to determine if the spill reached groundwater, or will the enrollee need to determine if the groundwater is hydrologically connected to a surface water? And I think that we've answered that question. So I'm going to move on to another question from Ray. It says, when do enrollees have to apply for coverage? It's a two-part question. The second part is, with the new proposed elements and updates, why can't water boards take over certification versus CWEA?
Very good. That's a good question, Ray. And hi, Ray. So the State Water Board currently has the wastewater treatment plant certification program and the drinking water operator certification program within our agency. However, the Water Board does not have the authority, it's not in regulation or so forth, to set up for us to have the sanitary sewer operator certification program. The CWEA certification program is like a third-party program. It's similar to stormwater professional certification programs, such as out of Sac State, the Office of Water Program, and so forth, in which our statewide and regional board NPDES permits for that regulate stormwater require those professionals. Since we have the establishment of third-party, at least one third-party organization in California that provides a robust certification program, that is what we turn to. The water boards do not have intention to initiate or pursue certifying sanitary sewer operators within our agency.
Thank you, Diana.
Sure.
The next question comes from CVCWA. It says, why is ground surface included in the spill definition? In addition, qualifications of the LRO. Has State Water Board staff evaluated how many sanitary sewer spills already comply, our sanitary sewer systems already comply with the certification/PE requirement, and how many would need to find someone that met these.
Okay, very good. And so this question is from the Central Valley Clean Water Association, CVCWA. Anyway, so the first question is, why are we concerned if sewage makes its way up to the ground? And that is because when sewage is on ground level, that is when there is the concern that it is either a nuisance, a public health threat, or that it will flow further into water of the state. So exfiltrated sewage that makes itself up to ground level is just taking a different path from sanitary sewer overflow, which overflows up to ground level from like a manhole or another path. The second question, have we evaluated the compliance of enrollees that the LROs are professional engineers and certified operators? No, we have not. So I don't want to just answer your question with a yes or no. I do want to include some background. We're looking further into the LRO for several purposes. For one reason, it's quality of data. The quality of data that is reported into SWRCB, many times we as water board staff question, how can a system go for 5 years without a spill? How can a system have this, this data coming in, which doesn't seem reasonable? Maybe there were observations out in the field later that there was remnants of sewage coming out of an MS4. Maybe why was that spill not reported? Why was it just so? Long story short here, our focus on the LRO is to have better quality data, better reporting, and better information coming in for the sanitary sewer overflow reduction program.
Thank you, Diana. We're going to stay just a few more minutes on LRO. There's a few more questions. A statement coming from the comment box while you were explaining that information states, as someone who is familiar with how, it comes from Michael Grayson,
Okay.
and it says, as someone who is familiar with how certain agencies gain a monopoly on trainings and certifications, are there plans to expand certification availability beyond CWA?
That is actually information we are collecting. The informal draft, if you note where we do address certification, it includes certification from CWEA or from Sac State's Office of Water Programs. Since we've released the informal draft, we have heard concern that those certification programs are not equivalent. And we're gathering more information on what makes them not equivalent. For the field of managing sanitary sewers, we know that this is a field that needs competent staff. And we don't want to just use the acknowledgement of a certified operator, which is a person that obtains certification through a program that is not robust, or it doesn't truly focus on the necessary knowledge and expertise to operate a system. So if you do have information, further information on other certification programs within the state, or the difference between the various certification programs, please provide that to us through email. We would appreciate that.
Thank you. We have two more comments regarding the legally responsible officials, and then we'll move on to specifications.
Okay.
So Thaxton made a statement, LRO requiring a grade 3 seems arbitrary. What is it based on? Which we've answered. And then this part is new though. Systems vary in size and complexity. Also note, not all grade 3 collection staff can, should, or will act as an LRO. So thank you for that, Daxton.
Yes.
And then the final comment comes from Valerie Fanning. Says, what are the sewer system qualifications of the state water board staff writing the proposed new order? Equal to what is to be required for the LRO?
Okay, very good. So let me respond to some of that though. First of all, we didn't choose the grade 3 level for the LRO on an arbitrary basis. We did look at what are the supervisory elements in the testing for the certification and what type of supervisory knowledge is needed to actually pass the test and to maintain that certification. As I noted, issuing this informal draft is to trigger this conversation so everyone can see things in context. And we've already been talking about how the grade 2 could actually serve that level of need, that a grade 2 operator under a certain supervisory capacity could still have that knowledge. So we're open to that. The systems, Walter, I'm sorry, what was the comment or question about the system of various sizes?
So it says systems vary in size and complexity. It was just a statement.
Yes.
And following up with that, there are not all grade 3 collection staff can, should, and will act as a LRO. In addition to that, I would like to add a question that just came, well, a statement coming through the comment box from Josh Bendaver. And it says, the annual SSO questionnaire lists how many certified operators are on staff and what level they are certified. So SWRCB does have the information if agencies are actually enrolled and submitting as required.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's correct. And so I'm going to address that one first and then go back to another comment that was made. So yes, that's correct. And within SWRCB, we do have data of how many operators enrollees employ or use for their system. So we have looked at graphs on that and compared the number of certified operators with performance. It's not a very stable pattern. However, we just know in general, I've been to some of the trainings, I understand the vigor of the trainings and the expertise behind certification. And so we do see that those enrollees that have lowered their number of spills and do have good performance, they are the enrollees that do employ or use a higher level of certified operators. I believe there's some consultants out among us also that have done an analysis on that. Was there a question? I think there was a question on, well, what qualifications do we as water board staff have? We have a variety of qualifications. Among our water boards, as we're working together with state and regional board staff, we have staff with a lot of expertise on inspection, having seen lots of sewer systems and spills. We have engineers that are very versed in manipulating numbers. We also, what we don't have is the expertise of what it's like to be on the other side and actually operate a sewer system. And so that is why we are taking this approach on this very important order, to actually work with everyone and pull in the expertise that we do not have.
Thank you, Diana. And there are still a few comments on this, but I think it may be good after I read this last one to move on to specifications. Just for time's sake, we still have roughly about 20 people that would like to voice their question, and we still have roughly 20 plus questions to go through. So
Very good.
the last question comes from Sean at, our last statement comes from Sean as, Bonner Bueller. Bonner Bueller says, please consider using wastewater treatment plant certification as well as collection system certification. Have a grade 5 since 1981 and manage small collection systems. Our engineer will not be an LRO due to liability concerns. We only have one staff person.
Very good. And can you repeat after the two options that this person's offering? Wastewater treatment plants operator certification. What's the second?
And then it was as well as collection system certification.
As well as collection system. Okay, very good. And I do notice the last couple comments are touching on that a certified operator may not want to be an LRO. We're not requiring the LRO to be a certified operator. Really, our intent behind this is to have the LRO be an individual that has the expertise and the experience and the competency for understanding that when there is information presented to that individual from the enrollee staff on what to report under penalty of perjury to the water board, that individual can competently certify that data that's going into our water board's public database. So that is the intent behind all of this, and your comments are well appreciated.
Thank you. So moving on to questions regarding specification. Valerie Fanning has a question regarding section 5.15. It says, notify regional board through CWICS for private lateral spills, and then just a question mark. So moving on to additional questions from Valerie, says, how do you determine waters of the state versus waters of the US? Where are maps of waters of the US and waters of the state available?
All right, so that's a hot legal question, and something that everyone has been struggling for decades, I think. It's difficult to delineate what's a water of the United States, and that is something that it's important to work with your regional board to identify if a surface water is a water of the United States or a water of the state. Here at the state water boards, when we write policy and permits, we acknowledge that we cannot make a quick determination on if a specific receiving water is a water of the US or a water of the state. That is a determination that's needed through the regional water boards, as well as other legal information. So through this order, we do not intend to provide maps on what's a water of the US or what's a water of the states.
Thank you. Another question on specification, section 55.
I'm sorry, before we go there, I'm sorry, Walter. I just want to make a note that if Tim Regan is available to respond further to that question here, either now or a little later, we can go back to that. Thank you. Tim, are you available now? Otherwise, we can go back to that.
Yeah, I am available. Can you hear me all right, Diana?
Yes. Can you just further address? So Tim is in our State Water Board Office of Chief Counsel. Tim, can you further address just in that comment in regards to how do you even identify a water of the U.S. versus a water of the state?
Well, I think you nailed it. It's a complex, evolving area of law, and I think that it's really going to be necessary to consult with the regional board. In general, it's the waters of the United States are the navigable waters. These are going to be your main rivers: American River, Sacramento River, tributaries to those rivers. If you have isolated wetland type areas, in many cases now they wouldn't be considered waters of the U.S., but they are waters of the state. And then there's recent case law that talks about how if non-federal waters are hydraulically connected to waters of the U.S., and those could even be groundwaters, then that could be considered a discharge to a water of the U.S. So it's a complex scenario, and I'm hopeful that each discharger and working with their assigned regional board staff will have a pretty good handle on what the waters in their area are categorized as.
Thank you for that. And just before we leave this is how complicated the definition of water of U.S. is. We actually have waters of the United States that are underground concrete box culverts because there used to be, because that culvert is actually conveying natural flow to where it used to be a natural water body, which due to development and so forth, that natural flow is now conveyed through underground infrastructure. That is how complex it is. And like we've said, your regional water board is probably the best place to start on if your surrounding surface waters are federal waters.
Thank you, Tim and Diana. Valerie has left a additional follow-up question to this comment, to your guys' comments here, and it states that, can you clarify that Category 1 is only for U.S. waters?
Yes. In fact, we put extra attention as we define the different categories. That Category 1 is only for discharges to waters of the U.S. And so if a water board is, is needing to address a Clean Water Act violation, which is the federal regulation, that should be corresponding with a Category 1 spill. All the other spills are solely for non-Category 1, non-waters of the U.S. involved.
Thank you. Continuing with specifications 5.15, Latoya Water states, system owner meaning the municipality or the reasonable party.
All right, so
Maybe
so 5.15 is the requirement to report spills from a private system. So so let's kind of go through a chain here. So if you are an enrollee of this order, it means that you are the owner of a sanitary sewer system that has regulatory coverage. So 5.5 means that if you, as the enrollee or your staff, which is the owner of one sanitary sewer, which could be the publicly owned sanitary sewer, sees a spill from a private system, then you are required to report that observed spill if it appears to be 1,000 gallons or greater, or if it appears to be going like in a storm drain grate or any other path towards surface water, towards the water of the state.
Thank you. The final question regarding specification 5.1.1 comes from Jose Ornelas. The question is, does section 5.15 and 5.16 change the requirement for Region 9 to report all private lateral sewage discharges, PLSDs?
All right, very good. So to start, our intent is to extend the existing required reporting from our San Diego Regional Board statewide. And it's not as easy as just copy and paste, honestly. Developing a statewide order, we always have to take in consideration, does this apply correctly to every single different system out there? But that is our intent. However, it does not change the any regional water board order. So when it comes to water board authority, the regional boards have their own authority to place requirements that are equal or more stringent than a statewide order, such as in this case. And that is why at this time, we do have regional boards that have more stringent requirements than the current 2006 order. Anything that the state water board adopts does not change a regional board order unless the existing regional board order is less stringent than the statewide order for the same applicable entity.
Thank you. A follow-up statement coming from Jay Heffernan through the comment box. It appears that section 5.15 is making it mandatory to report a PLSD to CWICS within 2 hours. Suggests changing language to as soon as practicable, but no later than XX.
Thank you for that comment. And we are hearing the same comment about the 2 hours not being practical. And the more we hear that comment, the more we realize 2 hours may not be practical. So for everyone listening to the question, and I'm not the best with acronyms, but PLSD means private lateral sewage discharge?
Sewage discharge.
Yes. Okay, great. That was a good on my behalf. Okay, so we will most probably be readdressing that 2 hour time frame to a lengthier time frame or as practical.
Thank you. Moving on to a question from Steve Jepson. It says, can we have examples of specific challenges, enforcement or other, with the existing order?
Absolutely. And with that, I am going to turn to Brian Elder and or Russ Colby, if you'd like to speak to that, please.
Sure. This is Brian Elder with the Office of Enforcement. I'm not sure if there was a particular section that that comment was intended for, but you know, I think there have been several issues with enforcement within the current order. Much of this stems from clarity within the order. You know, what does it mean to have a rehabilitation and replacement plan? What does it mean to prioritize and schedule both that type of work as well as long-term capital improvement programs? You know, while there are what we feel are industry standards or best practices that we've observed at I wouldn't even necessarily say more sophisticated agencies, just agencies in general, what we found are other agencies that we believe that particular area is, and again, perhaps some of this is the vagueness in the current language of the order, is unacceptable or inadequate. And where we see that is when we apply the enforcement policy and we look at things like culpability, that, you know, perhaps a condition assessment that was performed 20 years ago identified hydraulically deficient areas of the system. Those particular capital improvement projects were never implemented and ultimately results in a spill. And I think you can look at historical enforcement actions and specifically at the culpability section in a lot of those cases, and you can identify where we're seeing deficiencies within the current order. What does effective O&M mean? What does effective visual inspection mean? And so those are some of the areas that we'd like to see some clarification and you know, clear requirements that help to improve everyone's sewer system management plans and programs in general.
Thank you, Brian. I think that was a great response. Just to kind of break it up, because we have quite a bit of questions, I'm going in some type of an order, and we're going to start to discuss the sewer system management plan. So I would like to call now on Paul Kazi to voice his question regarding collaboration and sewer system management plan issues. We can have Paul to the front.
Pete, am I available?
Yes. Hi, Paul.
Hi, everybody. We very much want to thank the State Board for all the hard work that's gone into this revision over the past 2.5, 3 years. We believe that we are all environmentalists in this operation. Not only the State Board, the enrolled agencies, the NGOs, private property owners, everybody is there. The problem that we found with the current informal staff draft is that many of the things that are in there are very difficult to implement, very difficult to enforce against. And we believe at this point that it's necessary for the state to continue to work collaboratively with all of the stakeholders, not just individual stakeholders at a time. We very much appreciate the opportunity that CAS has been able to bring forward representatives from all of the professional associations across the state that have responsibility for operation of collection systems. And we believe that we've made some significant progress. However, the current draft needs more work. And so we would ask that the state consider the possibility of developing a small group of representatives and stakeholders from each of the stakeholder groups so that we can meet together and talk through many of the issues that are here in terms of implementability, enforceability, and many of the issues that we see in the current draft are going to be very difficult to do. We also need to worry about the cost of compliance. And so we want to talk through with those groups the cost of compliance, because we've identified many areas where additional costs will be required. And a big area that we see is the SSMP. It's great to hear Diana say that they're not requiring the revision to all of the SSMPs, but the reality is currently almost every SSMP that's written across the state includes 11 elements. The new draft, which says SSMP required elements, suggests 16 elements. And so either you need to clarify the draft so that 1,200 agencies are not going to have to redo their SSMPs, and that might be done by just including a checklist inside or outside the WDR that says these are the issues we want to see addressed in the existing 11 elements that you currently have in your SSMP, as opposed to stating that they need to be elements, because the way the current draft is written, it appears that we have to go to 16 elements. And so we think clarity on that. can come from a collaborative effort to talk through this with enforcement, with the SSO office staff, with the NGOs, with the enrolled agencies, and probably also with private property owners, because they will be significantly affected by this. So our ask really is that you continue the collaboration, continue the opportunity to work through this informal staff draft and make it more palatable for all parties, but hear what all parties' issues really are so that we can try to address those intelligently before trying to issue a state draft that will create all kinds of division and concern with this, not only in front of the state board, but with the enrolled community of 1,200 agencies, because currently the draft is not a significantly cost neutral issue. And so we would highly recommend and ask that you collaborate going forward with a small group before the final draft is prepared and put together. Again, thank you very much for all the hard work and effort that the State Water Board SSO office staff has put into this. We recognize it's a Herculean effort, and but there is more work to be done in order to get a draft that really works toward the betterment of the environment that we can all implement and handle easily and reasonably. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Paul. Walter, I'd like to speak to that. And Paul, you hit on a lot of important topics, and I just want to address a couple things. The first is the whole purpose of issuing an informal draft. Issuing an informal draft is not unique to the proposed reissuance of this order. Our Division of Water Quality, it's been like 4 years now that before we go out with any formal draft order for public comments, we first issue an informal draft. And I will keep repeating, this informal draft is for purposes of continued conversation. And one of the reasons we issue an informal draft is because we want to identify all those red hot topics beforehand. And we also want to remove any requirements that are not feasible for the permittee, discharger, or enrollee. So you hit on the exact reason why we put out this informal draft. And second, yes, in speaking with CASA, which is the California Association of Sanitation Agencies, there seems to be a high level of interest to actually meet with a combination of different interested party types. And what I understand is some of those initial meetings, they don't want water board staff there. They might want to just have initial conversation without staff. We are supportive of whatever approach it takes to continue the conversation, especially for discussion among different interested party types, because it is just as important as conversation directly with us water board staff. That's it.
Thank you, Diana. Appreciate that. I'm going to allow 2 more people to talk, and then I'll come back to some of the written questions regarding the sewer system management plan, and then we'll allow more people to talk. We have quite a few. So if Jared Voskuhl can be unmuted, please. Voskuhl.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, hi, Jared.
Hi, thanks, Walter. Good afternoon. Jared Voskuhl, Manager of Regulatory Affairs for the California Association of Sanitation Agencies. CASA represents over 125 public agencies comprising over 90% of the sewer population for the state. And we wanted to provide some feedback this afternoon. First, thank you to staff for this very informative presentation. We were lucky to meet with you all towards the end of last month to learn more about what went into this rewrite of the WDR, and we're very appreciative for that collaborative dialogue and the open channels of communication to provide input that's received and accepted. Likewise, we want to thank the State Water Board for sharing this informal draft with us so that we have more time in the process to review and organize the expertise of collection system operators and managers to provide you with their input for an implementable update to the WDR. The existing WDR from 2006 has dramatically reduced spill frequency and volume in California. This isn't disputed, and it's evident by the data in the SWRCB database. I've heard internally at the State Water Board that the 2006 WDR is heralded as a major success and an accomplishment for the state. Overall, SSO incidences or sanitary sewer overflows have decreased by 60% since 2008. And the category 1 incidences, which are the ones that actually reach surface waters and may adversely impact water quality, they only comprise about 15% of the incidences in the SWRCB database, and they've decreased by nearly 2/3 since 2008. So to that end, it's our perspective that the current SSS WDR is working, and there's a feeling of if it's not broke, don't fix it. And that's coupled with the question of why change horses in midstream in consideration of our members' current efforts and investments, including amongst other things, their inspection and planning schedules for repair and replacement to continue improving their systems. When we saw this informal staff draft, there was a feeling that a machete of a policy was being proposed, where in fact, perhaps a scalpel is what was really needed, or said another way, that a more narrowly tailored WDR would be appropriate. A lot of instances with this draft feel very prescriptive, and I think others may speak about it this afternoon. There are requirements that seem drafted to address a specific local or maybe regional issue, but when it's broadened out across the state, since this is a statewide order, the new provisions are costly, but perhaps unnecessary, unresponsive to local needs, not related to water quality, or not justified by the trends from the data in CWEEX for that locality, that region, or that collection system, thus resulting onerous regulations that won't address SSO incidences at their cause. I know you'll hear more from our members about specific issues and questions, so I'll close by just observing some summary level info about the impacted parties for this WDR. There are nearly 1,200 enrollees in the current WDR, and of those, nearly 80% of them are small or very small systems. A very small system is less than 20 miles, and they comprise 50% of the enrollees, and a small system is between 20 and 100 miles, and they're 30% of the enrollees. So when we speak about the cost of compliance, it can't be lost on whom the bulk of these costs of the eventual WDR will be borne by. And as those very small systems are not resource rich and serve communities with real restraints on raising rates, we would encourage you to find solutions to address the issues that you're wanting to that won't come with associated costs. So again, thank you for the collaborative dialogues. We look forward to the future meetings we've been planning with your team and other stakeholders in the coming months to discuss potential revisions to the informal staff draft to move it up to a place where mutually you're achieving your objectives and the regulated community is able to implement it without great expense. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
Yes, and this is Diana Messina. Thank you, Jared. I know those comments are very important to CASA and your members, your sanitation agency members. I noticed that, or I've heard the same word a couple times now, and I want to share our staff perspective of the word prescriptive. When we hear something several times, I think it's necessary to address it. Both at the state and regional water boards, we have to be very careful when we develop orders to not include what the requirements are for protection of water quality, but not to cross the line on exactly how to do it. And so maybe there can be some more information put in the chat or in further conversations. Our understanding of prescriptive, the way we use it is like in this context, when we're telling an enrollee that for a condition assessment, you must use certain equipment, you must You must clean your system with that equipment, with this frequency, and so forth. We've been paying a lot of attention in this order to make sure that we're not telling the enrollee how to manage their system, but we are stating that the enrollee must include the procedures for how the enrollee is determining how their system must be managed. And I look forward to this continued conversation. I simply want to point out that the informal order is requiring the enrollee to determine what procedures goes into their sewer system management plan. So, so with that, I think we need more conversation of what the term prescriptive means. The second item I simply want to acknowledge is, yes, a lot of sanitation agencies and municipalities have done a lot of work, and we don't want to put in a whole bunch of extra requirements where they've already been successful. Again, though, we're looking to address what's left in that success draft on what is currently still occurring. And just an observation that we make, that sanitation agencies, which are, you know, the membership of CASA and other organizations, those are the special districts and the agencies that typically have their act together. We are just as concerned, or even more concerned, with owners that are municipalities, cities or counties that don't have well-established local programs for their sewer systems, or those local programs are not the, you know, not what the local city council, you know, thinks of placing a high portion of the additional resources they may have locally to the sewer systems versus putting them in parks or other city utilities that have much more visibility. So, so with that, I'm sharing our intent here to continue working with CASA, but also continue sharing with you where our water board concerns are with still the current performance of what is not being done. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. I'm going to do a few more people to voice their comments, and then we'll go back to written questions. The next is Monica Oakley, O-A-K-L-E-Y, Oakley.
Okay, thank you very much, Walter, and also Diana for all the work that you guys have been doing on this. And thank you for holding this workshop today. I appreciate the ability for us to comment on this informal draft document. I'm very concerned about the release of this document, though. I'm a bit mystified as to why a wholesale rewrite of the SSSWDR with many new requirements is needed when sanitary sewer overflows have been consistently and dramatically decreasing over the last 12 years as people continue to implement the current SSSWDR successfully. Your graph showed the number of SSOs decreasing with a couple of spikes in the volume, and that you were really relying on the volume. But however, the 2017 year was an even wetter year than 2011, yet there was half the number of SSO volume. In addition, 2019 was a very similarly wet year to 2017, and it is even lower in volume than 2017, and even comparable to the dry years. So to say that volume is not going down means that the data are not being evaluated in the proper context. So moving on from the data, it is my understanding that agencies have asked why this document is needed. And the answer has always, that I've heard has been given and that we've heard a little bit about today, is that we need more enforcement tools. But it seems to me and to a lot of other agencies that the current WDR gives you plenty of enforcement tools if you would just use them. And this draft document, if adopted in its current state, would only penalize the good performing public agencies with costly bureaucratic paperwork, extra burdens on agency staff, and unnecessary consulting fees. In any event, the multitude of new requirements in this draft permit would be a waste of scarce public resources. My question to you is, are you willing to provide the exact reasons that are driving the wholesale rewrite of this SSS-WDR? It's not, something like it's been 15 years or, we're concerned that people aren't spending enough money on their system. Something really more specific, because I don't see it yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica.
Yes, thank you very much for your comments. I don't know how to turn back. I don't have control of the presentation on how to turn back to the slide, and I don't know if we have the time to do that. But I did include a slide specifically on what the objectives are with the reissuance of this order. And so we take your comments very seriously, and we thank you for sharing that. And we will continue providing further detail as is necessary for everyone to understand the intent of this reissuance. We're hoping that the expansion of all the findings, the new resolutions, the data, and so forth, provide the basis. From hearing your comment, it still sounds like that that you believe the basis there is not thorough enough. And so we look forward to continue discussing this with you.
All right. A comment coming through the comment box here. The first from James McPherson. It says, yes, specific empirical information that supports the need for each change. Hip, hip, hooray. The second comment comes from Judith Marquise. Can you give folks insight as to the reason why orders and permits must be updated every 5 years in compliance with the federal EPA, and that the EPA reports then to Congress on SSOs?
Yes, this is Diana. I want to make sure we don't confuse this order with an NPDES permit. So the state and regional water boards issue NPDES permits, which are federal and states orders, in which we work closely with US EPA, and in which there is a requirement that those permits be reissued every 5 years. The NPDES permitting program for California is delegated from US EPA to the California water boards, and that's why there's all the subsequent reporting that goes into federal databases. For the waste discharge requirements, there's no requirement for a set of waste discharge requirements to be issued in 5 years. Typically, waste discharge requirements will be re-looked at either 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years. I am not versed on the any federal requirements to report to US EPA for sanitary sewer overflows. Is there someone else in our staff team that can address that question? Walter, do you know if the work that you do with the SSO database, if there is any routine work you do to forward that information to US EPA?
Currently, no, we're working on the EPA reporting requirements that may end up merging through, but right now I don't have to report anything to the EPA specifically.
Okay. I don't have an answer for you right now, but I would say that the link to US EPA is the Category 1 spill link, which would be any violation of the Clean Water Act that affects the waters of the US. But at this time, I'm sorry, I don't have that information to address that specifically for SSOs. But once again, this is not an NPDES permit. These are state issued waste discharge requirements.
Thank you, Diana. So the final commenter before I go back to written questions, I'm going to call on Rosanna Lacara. Her questions regarding spill discharges, waters of the state, and the sewer system management plan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, you're a little faint.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Great. Could you mention again which question? I submitted several, so I want to make sure.
You submitted several. I can read them all aloud if you prefer. I've saved them all under your name. So I have all of your questions here. If you'd like just for me to read them so you can get a refresher, and then if you want to expound on that after I read them, that's fine.
No, I think I'll focus on the ones that maybe have been maybe not touched on to the extent that I was thinking. The primary one would be the content of the SSMP, which has been already maybe mentioned briefly, but I did write a recent comment on that stating that having such a prescriptive table of contents in one of the attachments limits the ability, I think that's attachment D, David. I think that limits the ability of the agency to organize the document in a manner that makes it the best suited for their implementation of it, and also for training purposes when staff is assigned to certain program elements, but maybe not the others. An example would be how we prepared SSMPs that have the majority of the content in attachments, so that number one, those can be taken to the field, for example, or used for training. And a good element like that that works really well is the current fog control program, so that inspectors that are assigned to that task are well versed in that section, and they're aware of the entire content of the SSMP, but there's a specific focus on the fog control program. So I believe that being so prescriptive in the content, table of content of the document will limit agencies' ability to implement it, and maybe actually be somewhat detrimental compared to the organization that allows for more flexibility. And also, the other thing is that it allows the agency to update these documents or these sections and elements more readily, because you're not looking at updating an entire document, reorganizing all the page numbers. You can just take an attachment, update it, and you're done, and you can just swap it out. So those are some notes on the SSMP content and how to make it more practical for the agencies.
thank you, Rosanna. That's a good comment. So in the last hour, I've heard 2 times then now that the implication of the table of contents implies the structure of the SSMP. So we can, our sole purpose, our sole intention of having a table of contents is to provide you the page for where you can go straight to a certain item you're looking for in the in attachment E. Other than that, it is a list of the required elements. So, so if there's something we can do, either removing the table of contents or putting a clear note that the sole purpose, what the sole purpose of the table of contents is, we will look back into that. Our intention is not for the table of contents to be interpreted as the order of the SSMP. And now that I've heard it twice, it sounds like it is interpreted as that. So we will need to address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. I think if I may suggest, then it looks like it's more of a checklist of minimum requirements or something towards that end and not table of contents. So I think if you start maybe considering that, we will make strides to allow for both things to be met, as you mentioned. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And as you mentioned, Rosanna, your approach is what we do not want to get in the way of, which if there are SSMPs and there's already an attachment addressing it and it's just a modification of an attachment or any item that's missing, you just include as an attachment. We want to uphold that it is the enrollee's choice on how they organize their SSMP and how they instruct their own staff on where to find which elements of the plan in their own plan.
Thank you, Diana. I'm going to go to a few comments since we're on the sewer system management plan. Let's continue with a few comments regarding that. The next comes from Dan Dyer. Give me a second. Someone made a comment and it bumped me back out. When this is adopted, can we wait for the next SSMP revision for the new requirements, or will it need to be completed sooner? What is the timeline for this change?
Okay, that's a very good question. And this is always the difficulty for any kind of statewide order that goes from an original one to another one. The question basically is, how quickly do we have to implement the any SSMP required elements in the new order that are not in the current SSMP? So we do have language in the informal draft in which we recognize for the sewer system management plan updates, which are due within, I think it says 2 years of the adoption date of the order, that enrollee can include the new items in the following updates. So we are putting some attention to that to make sure that enrollees that have their current 5-year cycle for the update don't get stuck within a time period after adoption or effectiveness of this order, that they don't have enough time to do that. Also, I do want to make a clarification. This already may be clear, but it may not be. the requirements as we've informally drafted for the SSMP, and especially for the system resiliency, but even throughout the whole attachment D, those requirements are for the inclusion of procedures into your planning document. It's not for the completion of acting out on those procedures. And so, so I just want to make sure that's clear. I think I've heard conversation where folks said, well, we can't complete a risk assessment, you know, in that much time. It takes much longer. The requirement in the order for the SSMP is that procedures are put into the SSMP for how that enrollee is going to conduct a risk assessment. So I just want to, Matt, I'm using as an example, I just want to make sure I clarify that on what the requirements are for the next update.
Thank you, Diana. We do have a time constraint of one of our parties in attendance, and they'd like to speak. So if we can have Rachel Lather unmuted so that she can ask her question.
Let's see. Okay, I'm unmuted. Thank you, Walter. I appreciate it. My name's Rochelle Lather, so you got both my names wrong. I'm so sorry. Everybody that knows me laughing right now because and you know, I have a lot of like just questions and I'm not very focused. So I want to be focused. I am a director on the board of directors of a water district, and we're looking at doing a purified recycled water project. And I want to make sure that these and we're getting partially treated sewage from a treatment plant, and that's going to be coming to us. And I just want to make sure that some of these issues about what is a spill and what isn't a spill, and even with us injecting purified water, that it doesn't somehow fall into any of these categories. And that's just a thought. You don't have to address it right now. The other part that has been really concerning me when I look at this is all the stormwater requirements. And I think it's another discussion, but I just want to raise it to your attention that it's not so simple to work with another agency. And some places, all the agencies are in the same building, like in Santa Cruz, quite a bit are. But where I'm at, I don't even know who a lot of the people are at like Monterey County. I reached out to the director of public works, and like when we're talking about stormwater and whether or not we've spilled into a stormwater system or we have access to it or any of that stuff, he said all of their stormwater information is just on maps that show mile markers on the road. So, and that can't be the only organization like that. So all this collaboration, I am happy about wanting to do, but there needs to be some care and understanding that it's not just us. I understand the NPDES permit is a federal kind of permit, but there needs to be some like give and take. So all the agencies are needing to be collaborative for a reason, not just us, because we don't have any power over them. The other issue, I'm sorry, I'm like trying to quickly go through it, is satellite agencies. And I just started thinking about stormwater management and preventing inflow and infiltration. I know that our satellite agency thinks I&I is a good thing. So we don't have a lot of control over that. And I'm not sure, and it's because we do recycled water and they think it helps, but I know that it's public, so they've said it at board meetings. I don't see any reason why I can't tell you that. but I was directed to work with them on that. And I'm not sure how, if you have a complete difference of opinion. And all that goes into this general order, really. And I just want you guys to be aware of that, because I think everything sounds great until somebody like me has to implement it. And I actually agree with everything as far as what the outcome needs to be and what we need to do. Other stormwater issues that I've seen are homes and hillsides, and they think the good thing to do is to dump all their downspouts onto the hillside behind their house. And we have an easement at the bottom, and then there's a landslide and it affects us. I mean, I'm not sure how much we can do that's in this proposed order. And I know it's not finished, so that's why I'm bringing this up. And there may be other issues from others, but I'm sure I missed a bunch of stuff. So if you guys want to talk to me, you know where to find me. And that's about it.
Yes, this is Diana. Thank you, Michelle, because I always value your input, because you're actually one of the folks that's doing all the work. That's always been very open to speaking to us staff and just speaking directly like that. I want to address just a couple things. The first thing, which was your question or your concern, which is injection of treated water for other purposes. That is, I'm sure, is regulated separately. That intentional injection of treated water is outside of the scope of this order, and is regulated accordingly through another order if necessary. I guess I'm going to ask a question. I'm just going to put it out there to the audience, and Rochelle, you can answer, or if someone else wants to answer. So when there is a spill at 2 a.m. in the morning, and operators are sent out there and they see raw sewage going into a storm drain grate, who do they call when it comes to the owner of that drainage conveyance system to work together to try to stop that spill before it gets to a receiving water? And or who do they work with after the spill when cleanup needs to occur within the drainage conveyance system?
Well, that's a good question. It was something I forgot to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's one of my issue, or one of the things I wanted to bring up is, like, we try to work together, but at 2 a.m. you don't have 24-hour people at, let's say, the county, drainage crew or a drainage director or any of that. It depends on the county, but I don't know of any in my experience that would actually answer the phone at 2 a.m. and help with sewage going into a drainage. And then, we have this lack of information, so we don't know where it's going from the, from the spill location. Even if it's going into a pipe, we're not sure where that pipe ends up.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you have to do your best to keep it from going in there, but then the next day you got to find people. And I'd love it if it was in their NPDES permit that they have to have somebody available 24 hours a day to respond to emergencies. But that's something out of your purview. And maybe it is in there because I don't have an NPDES permit.
I see. So just a follow-up. So if that same spill happens at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, like on a Saturday, do you have the information of who to work with the owner of the storm drain in order to try to intercept that spill or block it at an access hole within the storm drain system?
No,
I see. Okay.
no. If it's during the day, during the week, we might be able to find somebody, and I see some people have comments, it depends on the jurisdiction. Mine, no. But we just go in there and beg forgiveness later and just block it and do what we have to do.
Mm-hmm. And so thank you. I'm asking these questions more so to show our intent for why we are putting forth these informally drafted requirements when it comes to the collaboration.
Thank you, Diane.
This is Gregogan. I will have to interrupt just as a time check. It's 3:50. We have approximately 30 minutes left for the question and comment session. We'll still continue with the question and comment session, and then at 4:20, we'll pivot to the next steps, concluding remarks for this presentation. However, I will note that State Water Board staff are willing to stay afterwards after 4:30 to answer any lingering questions or comments that are coming through, just because we do have a large volume coming in. So yeah, I will leave it at that. So we'll continue on at 4:20-ish, we'll pivot. 4:30, we'll wrap it up for folks who are only able to stay until the scheduled time, and then we'll come back to questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ger.
Thank you, Ger. And I did receive comments in the chat box relating to your questions, Diana. So they're all statements, so I can just read them aloud here. Andy Morrison says, most agencies try to clean up and recover on their own. Megan West, in our county, they block off the drain and contact the Stormwater Management Division. It happens, sorry, someone left a comment. It happens to be another division within our Department of Public Works. Christopher Brown, if it hits heavy flow, it is gone. Valerie Fanning, a current category 1 is called into OES within 2 hours, who notifies the local agencies. Judith Marquise states the POTW and the county have 24-hour response for SSOs and stormwater discharges here in Orange County. Robert England says, I think most agencies have access agreements and clean their own spills. Kevin Street, is the priority that we call someone or that we find a way to establish containment as soon as possible? If you want to speak to that. And the last statement that we have here is from Sean S. We have keys to access the county and city access, and either use keys to open gates, and if not, we cut the locks and intercept the spill and follow it and recapture as well as wash down.
Okay, all right. I have to say that that's really good input. And so I've heard several examples there on where you have the collaboration. One was, we have the agreement that if there's a spill, our staff can go right into their system and do what we need to do. That, that is, if I was an enrollee and that was my situation, that is what I would be putting in the sewer system management plan for that collaboration procedures, is that when there is a spill into MS4, per this agreement, you go right in there and you stop it. So then the other examples, it's within our own department. I think that's great. That's your collaboration. That's an example, like Rochelle was saying, that it may be easier for some enrollees than others. For the example of if there's lots of flow in the conveyance system and the spill goes in there, it's gone. It is gone, yet how do you know where it's gone to? So has it gone to a receiving water? Has it gone to an infiltration basin? How are you going to report, even if you need to determine where that's gone to, who do you contact to know for what water goes in this grate, what what receiving water does it end up in, or what infiltration pit or so forth. So, and thank you, Andy, for saying we just go right in there and clean it up. If that's the case, and your drainage agency has never turned a blind eye, then in that sewer system management plan for that, you could put either not applicable because this is how we've always done it and it's accepted, or however you want. If you notice, the informal draft is requiring that the enrollee puts in the procedures in their sewer system management plan on how they're going to collaborate. We don't say you must have active collaboration with agreements and so forth. So those were good examples. I'll just tell you, a hair kind of popped up when I just heard, well, if it gets in there, it's gone. Just simply because there is the expectation that the enrollee needs to know where that spill has gone to. But I'm sure you just made that comment and there's a lot more to it. So I don't mean to be derogatory over the comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Additional comments regarding your question. One from James Fisher. Communications program D13, an existing order requires collaboration with systems that are tributary or satellite, which could also provide opportunities to include storm drain collaboration with applicable contacts. Sam Rose states, my agency handled cleanup ourselves and then notified storm drain owner. This was an arrangement we made with SD owner in advance, storm drain. The current sewer system management plan requires that we have storm drain maps. Judith Marquise further states, I agree with Robert Inglet that agencies have MOUs to respond to spills and should have something in place, even with smaller municipalities and the county they are in as a phase 2 in PDS. Valerie Fanning, the order has mention of daily collaboration, also an operational cleanup. Christopher Brown, when anyone puts a comment, it moves where I'm at. Let me clarify that we will block, plug, dam, and divert, hydro and vacuum as best possible. Use maps to follow storm system. Getting ahead of discharge into a high-flowing storm system can be challenging. Judith Marquise, Diana, exactly. They all need to know their receiving water body and if they have high ground water in an area. Sean S. We also have storm drain system and layers for their infrastructure on our CMMS system available to all operators and personnel. I don't know the acronym for CMMS. Rochelle Lather said, I'd love to get all storm drains as a layer. It should be required in the NPDES permit. And our final comment regarding this comes from Robin Morshita. We have stormwater GIS on our tablets from adjacent agencies. We block the stormwater entry points and follow the system to remove wastewater.
Those are wonderful examples. And I go back to what I said before, if we need to clarify what we are intending, what I've heard is collaboration. If, for example, if the sewer system owner already has obtained system maps from the drainage conveyance system owner, they have the maps, They have either this written, spoken, or unspoken permission to go in there, whatever it is. It sounds like you have certain collaboration there. Our intent is to, I think we've already viewed our intent. Our concern is for those sanitary sewer system owners that do not have this. And so that is why our intention is that if you already have this collaboration to whatever degree is necessary for the system staff to stop the spills and to clean it up, then that goes into the SSMP. Even if it's, if you don't have it written down. But we are concerned and we want to make sure that all enrollees have some level of coordination with their drainage agency that's needed to successfully stop those spills and clean up afterwards.
Thank you. I'm going to continue to call on a few people. I know Gur mentioned that we're going to extend the time frame. So I'm going to call on a few people and then go back to the written questions. The next person I'm going to call on to speak is Jen Jones.
Hey, Walter. Can you hear me?
Hi, how are you doing? Yes, hi Jen.
I'm doing great. Hey, everyone. My name is Jen Jones. I serve as the Executive Director and the CEO of the California Water Environment Association, or CWEA. First off, just wanted to thank Diana for your detailed presentation, Gerg for facilitating, Walter, of course, for moderating. And further, I'd like to commend everyone involved in pulling together this draft. It's an enormous effort, and I'd like to thank you for providing this opportunity for public comment here today, as well as for the future opportunities to collaborate on revisions to the draft. At CWEA, we empower wastewater professionals as they protect California's most critical resource, water. We're proud to certify over 3,800 collection system operators throughout California through our recognized technical certification program. Our collection systems maintenance certification has helped workers advance in their personal careers and has helped the agencies that have adopted it promote a measurable standard for their workforce. CWEA strongly supports and commends the inclusion of certification as an alternative to being a registered professional engineer for the role of legally responsible official, as well as for the inclusion of certified staff in the criteria for system-specific reduced reporting. The inclusion of this demonstrates that a collection system operator's years of experience and knowledge in the field, validated and demonstrated through obtaining certification, is valued. We support the promotion of standards for collection systems operation and maintenance as it elevates the profession, promotes ongoing training and education, and ultimately benefits collection system operators in their careers. We're just very pleased to see this as included in the draft, and I hope to see it included in the future. And I'm just really pleased that you are recognizing the hard work of our collection systems operators. Thanks.
Thank you, Jen.
Yes, and Jen, I want to say thank you. And I always, for all our statewide permitting programs, when we go through any kind of reissuances, I always try to remind interested parties to not forget to comment on what they do like, because there can always be people that are trying to remove what you do like. And so it helps us to know who supports what. And with that, we are working closely with Jen Jones and her staff to further look at a grade 2 operator and the material that operator must have, the knowledge they must have, the experience they must have for a grade 2 certification, so that we can consider that level certification for LRO. And so those discussions are going forward.
Yeah, thank you so much, Diana. And thank you for making this possible for the public option.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Diana. I'm going to call one other person, and then we'll go back to comments. We do see your comments from webcast coming in via our email, and I will make sure to get to those as well. Can we have Andy Morrison unmuted, please?
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. So I have probably multiple comments and questions. I put it all in the chat, so you don't have to write it down. I'm just going to start saying something you've already heard, Diana and others that were on the call the other day, but the 2 hours for all spills is ridiculous. And it does currently say all spills, or in E1 1.1, it says any spill, and E1 1.2.2, those details are going to be known, like who owns the property. So whatever's put in there so people can comply with the notification requirements is going to be garbage, because it could take a day or more to figure out who owns this property. You know, agencies need to dig into the assessor's parcel information, and it could simply reference a corporation that is in a whole different state or in Southern California. E1 1.2.3, the notification updates, it's the same problem. It's probably going to contain stuff that's not accurate. And so here's the question: do you really want agencies providing information into CWICs before it's really known, simply so they don't miss the time frame? And related to that is, why do we want CWIC spill notification portal when we already have OES as notification, which does alert the regional boards that we have a sewer spill that's over 1,000 reached water? So there's already exists a notification. It seems duplicitous. Let me press on, and then I'll get through all my questions, and then you can respond. E1 2.4 talks about GPS of the spill origination and 3 locations at the edge, and 3.3.2 and 3.4.1. And my question is, are you planning on enhancing the mapping tool in CWICs, or do you expect everyone to start buying and using handheld devices to accomplish this? Another comment related to that: the GPS furthest reaches of the spill for the Cat 4 and the private spills will likely be the same GPS as the origin. And so let me press on. Attachment E1 and E2, they differ. That's pretty confusing. So it says 2-hour requirement for all spills, versus in E2 it says Cat 1 and 2 only, not the 3 and 4, and only private spills that meet certain criteria. I'm going to tell you that that's going to be very confusing, and people are going to accidentally violate when you have confusion like that. Diana, you mentioned earlier that the Cat 4s could potentially still be a nuisance. You know what? Maybe the 50 gallons is the wrong amount, but there is some amount where that spill does not reach water and does not reach a storm drain, and it's all right there. So I'll just say Cat 4s and small private spills, they don't really impact the environment, nor do they create a public nuisance. And whatever that threshold is, it really creates data noise in CWICs, and it distracts from the spills that may actually impact the environment or may actually cause a public nuisance. So, you know, the whole documenting and reporting all the details spelled out in E-1 3.4.1, it's onerous, and it's really a waste of public resources. So the question there is, what is the value to the water board of having details on very small Cat 4s that don't reach waters, and private spills that are small? And then a kind of an overarching comment: when you include exfiltration in all these categories, it's impossible to meet these notification requirements and reporting requirements. So there's going to be a question: is how, and you've probably heard it already, how are the enrollees supposed to comply with notification and reporting requirements for exfiltrations that somehow got to the groundwater. Like, when did it start? How many gallons? It's like, and then how do they meet the 2 hours? So I'm done talking, and the questions are in the chat if you like.
Thank you, Andy.
Yes, thank you, Andy. And I want to say we always value your input because we know you're extremely experienced, not only doing the work, but training people to do the work. So, so there was a lot there, and there is a lot of detail in attachment E and attachment E1, which Jared from CASA and I will most probably need to have some kind of focus group looking at that. A couple things I want to clarify, and I'm not sure if it may be incorrect in the informal staff draft, but I just want to make sure I clarify. The purpose we're requiring an enrollee to report a spill from a private system is so that we can, so attention can be placed on that spill to stop it. So our, I don't think it's in the informal draft, but it may be. We're not requiring an enrollee to find the name and the owner and to notify the owner and so forth. We just want to know that the spill is taking place, even if it means, if it seems like a fairly large spill, we can send a regional board staff out there, or there can be another responder and so forth. I hear you and a lot of other people loud and clear with that 2 hours. I have a feeling that 2 hours doesn't have a long life. And so all the other details when it comes to the extent of the lateral extent of the spill and so forth, there is purpose behind the folks, those of us that thought that it would be a good idea to go in to put that information in a draft. And now is the time on folks like you and others to say, hey, let us educate you. We don't want noise in CWICs, but we also want the proper reporting of when there is 20 gallons and it is ponded at a low point of a street, and it is sitting there as a nuisance, that needs to be reported. Where I know a lot of folks out there, some operators report a couple drops as a gallon because they don't want their certification to be removed or to get in trouble. Other folks, it's like, you know, we're not going to report this. We're just trying to get some kind of consistency. So with your comments, if it means, well, those operators that are reporting the 1 gallon, if we don't need the reporting of the 1 gallon, that should be taken out altogether. Right now in the 2006 order, it is being interpreted. If it's a gallon, we're reporting it. Or unless it's something that someone really notices, we're not reporting it. And we're just trying to get that consistency in place. So with that, I'm hoping that we will be talking to you more in another forum where we're looking at this attachment E1 much closer. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. I had a request from one of the requested attendees to speak. And so I'm going to call on them now. Melissa Thorme, Thorme.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. I had just a couple comments and questions, and Diana and staff, thank you very much for all the work that you've put in on this. But I do want to echo Monica Oakley's comment about whether we need to have a wholesale rewrite of this permit. It seems like the evidence shows that it is working and maybe it needs some tweaks around the edges, but there is some concern that there is so much specificity around the requirements. And under Water Code Section 13360, you're not allowed to prescribe the manner of compliance. So we just wanted to make sure that you're looking at that requirement. Also, it's unclear why the prohibitions are being changed and now why there's a prohibition of all spills. It seems like that's a little beyond the legal authority of the water boards, because you're allowed to regulate discharges of water to waters of the state or waters of the US, or nuisances as defined in the water code, but not every drop that might land on the ground if it doesn't have any environmental impact. Also, exfiltration should not be included in the spill definition because it's virtually impossible to design a system and maintain one economically that doesn't have any infiltration or exfiltration. And the water board has WDRs permitting septic leach fields. So it's unclear why those can be permitted, yet any sewage that's coming out of a pipe couldn't be permitted. So those are things that we would hope that you would look at when you're preparing the next round. Thank you very much for letting me talk.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yes, and thank you, Melissa. I just want to address a couple things. Your input's always very valuable, especially since you come into it with the perspective of the legalities. And so we have heard the same comments about the legality of the proposed prohibition number 1. We've heard that from CWEA and a couple other larger agencies. So there is further attention on that proposed prohibition, which is any sewage leaving the sanitary sewer system is prohibited. We do have a finding in the informal order. It might not be sufficient enough, but it is a finding that says most sewer systems leak. It's just most sewer systems leak. And so just to share the staff intent, we are not going forward with the intention that sewer systems should not be leaking. We know they leak. I've heard from a couple folks on, just how do you even know if sewage is going to groundwater? We are hoping to better craft and better understand, better have this document reflect that we want to know when there is knowledge from an enrollee that their sewage is entering the groundwater. And so that's more of a when. So, when an enrollee knows or suspects their sewage is entering groundwater, that is when we want the reporting. Similar to any other spill, when you know an overflow is taking place, you report it. When you know that overflow is reaching a water of the state, it's reported. The same thing if the route that sewage takes is underground and you know it's reaching a water. Otherwise, if the exfiltration is taking place and you have no indication or reason to believe that it is reaching a water of the state, which is groundwater or otherwise, there's no reason to report. The order is not requiring reporting. In fact, it's even stating that that type of release is outside the scope of this order. So thank you very much. And we are continuing to look into those comments. We have heard those comments from others.
Thank you, Diana. I have a comment following up with your statement from James Fisher stating, regarding prohibition on SSOs, Region 9, San Diego has an historic order prohibiting any spill upstream of a wastewater treatment plant since 1996. See current order here. And he provided the link to that order for everyone. So thank you, James, for that.
Walter, this is Gert. Just as a time check, we have about 2 more minutes to the question and comment session. So we maybe can fit in like maybe 1 or 2 more comments, and then we will need to pivot.
Okay, thank you, Gur. I will, just to give the people that had questions via webcast an opportunity, I will go ahead and read aloud that question here. So this question comes from Dindo Carrillo. Can you please confirm if all Category 1 spills will require water quality sampling regardless of spill volume?
Sure, as we're informally proposing, the answer is no. Only if that Category 1 spill is of 50,000 gallons or greater into a water US, you will need the water quality monitoring that needs to be sent to a laboratory for analysis. If it's less than that, the only what we call monitoring would be of those constituents that can be measured out in the field.
Thank you,
Okay.
Diana.
I want to just real quickly, I know we're under time frame. There was another commenter that says, why are you asking to monitor for chlorine? And that is because if the travel time is very low and there's chlorinated water, and that chlorinated water in the sewage does go to a water body with aquatic life, chlorine is toxic if it is above an extremely low level set forth by US EPA. So that's our concern for chlorine.
All right. So unfortunately, that does conclude the scheduled time that we have for questions and comments right now. Like I mentioned earlier, we are willing to stay in longer after the 4:30 scheduled workshop and answer any other questions or comments that folks have if they have the time to stay afterwards. So now we'll move on to the next portion in which Diana Messina will walk us through the development process of the informal staff draft.
All right, thank you, Gur. So here's somewhat of a roadmap if you all think we're going straight. And it starts on the left where we started our staff outreach a couple years ago. And I have to say, we pulled in a lot of information. We're at the second dot from the left right now with the informal staff draft of the order. As well as the next dot with the public workshops. As you've heard a couple folks say before, some folks have already met with us as an organization. Some want to meet with us more individually, and we are continuing to schedule those meetings. We call them focused meetings. And we are open and actually very elated to see if multiple interested parties are willing to get in the same room and discuss the same comments. So what we want out of that is just further advancement of a draft that is feasible and practical. So we do not have any time frame placed on us as staff right now for this informal discussion stage. As we continue working, I'm sure our time's going to run out to where we get a little more pressure or a lot more pressure to put out a formal public draft. So that is the fifth dot. And that is the stage in which we've done all our work informally. We've incorporated everything into a formal draft document. The State Water Board issues it as a formal draft for a public comment period. Typically a draft so complex or so controversial, such as to regulate sanitary sewers, will probably go out for 45 or 60-day public comment period. In the middle of that public comment period, our board likes to have a hearing. They don't like to wait until after we receive comments. Our board wants to hear directly from interested parties at a public hearing in the middle of the public comment period. That usually takes place about a month after we've released the draft so that people have some time to ingest it. Also with these larger statewide type permits and orders, we also have public workshops such as this one, but over a formal draft just to make sure that interested parties understand the content. So then by the end of the public comment period, there's the requirement that written comments are submitted by the due date. Then we continue on and we plan to have more discussion with more focused meetings, because we always know even after a formal draft order, we still don't have it right. This is typically with most of our statewide orders. We continue discussing after we get public comments. We respond to the comments formally in writing, and we prepare what we call is a final draft. That is still not final, as it is then scheduled to go to a state water board meeting for their consideration of adoption. And the water board again allows time to hear oral testimony, oral feedback from interested parties. Before then, they close that discussion, and among themselves, they choose whether to adopt the order as drafted or not. Lots of times those adoption meetings, the board will say, we will consider adoption staff. If you go out, take 20 minutes, make changes to address this and bring it back to us. So lots of times those adoption meetings are a very long working meeting. That is why we say nothing is in stone until the water board adopts an order. So this is basically the development process. I know from experience that no one's going to be happy with any version of any draft. And that is the purpose why we have incorporated so much discussion all the way through to adoption of this order. And then by that time, that's when everything actually starts. That's when a lot of the hard work starts. So I hear you all when you say we need to get this right, otherwise it's going to be quite costly. So thank you for those comments. Is there a next slide?
Nope.
This is your slide, right, Ger?
Yes. So that concludes the official portion of today's public workshop. Once again, thank you for everyone who was able to participate today. It was a very lively discussion, and even I learned a couple of new things. Just a couple of quick reminders as we wrap up. If you're aware of any other interested parties that are not subscribed to our statewide email system, please pass this slide or information onto them so that they can get further updates through that email system. And again, this entire presentation will be uploaded onto the Sanitary Sewer Systems Program webpage. I know we are willing to stick around a little bit longer until 5 o'clock. For additional questions and comments. So we will be able to do that for folks who have the time. And then if you do not have the time today and you still, we don't get to your question or comment, we will also be holding a similar workshop like this, same exact details. The discussion will go on April 16 from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., I believe. And you'll have an opportunity there to voice any questions or comments that you have. But with that, before we resume the question and comment session, if you need to leave, go for it. Thank you for joining us today. We will take a quick 5-7 minute break and we'll resume around 4:35.
Ger, can I interrupt, gently interrupt? There's one more thing that came to mind I want to add. Is that as staff, we're having a hard time with outreach to actual disadvantaged community representatives. And I understand we do have Civiqua and so forth, but we really would like to bring to the table actual agency representatives that are with disadvantaged communities, so we can hear directly from them. So if anyone listening, if you do have contact with some of the disadvantaged communities, actual agency representatives, please let them know that we'd love to have some kind of information exchange to understand their position with this order. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Diana, for those remarks. But yeah, we'll take a short 5-minute break. We'll resume at 4:35. Steve, would you be able to pull up the break slide? All right. Thank you. Alrighty, it is 4:35. We are in the extra session for today's public workshop, where we will be continuing the question and comment session. I will now turn it back over to Walter Mobley to resume.
Thank you, Gur. The next presenter I'm going to bring forth is Steve Jepson.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Well, thanks for staying late and allowing us that have been patiently waiting to provide some input. So this is Steve Jepson from SCAP, and I'm also speaking on behalf of CAS's coalition on the topic of exfiltration. And as you've heard, we have great concerns with the exfiltration elements. Exfiltration is still a theory. Yeah, there's been documented cases where there's severe pipe defects that have leaked and been discovered and repaired. There's cases of illegal chemical dumping that have damaged pipe or components. These are isolated incidents in miles and miles and miles of collection systems in the state. We have CCTV investigations that are uniformly done in all systems to identify large defects and repair them. To apply these few cases of exfiltration from serious defects into kind of a system-wide, all collection systems are exfiltrating some amount, and therefore it could be a spill and affect groundwater, is just not practical. And to put that theory into a regulation that's enforceable is just really challenging for us to accept. It's quite scary. It's not a regulation ready concept. It's not feasible. The San Diego region has initiated an investigative order to try to measure and quantify exfiltration. That's just getting started. The researcher will be the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project, SWRCB, and they're still trying to develop an exfiltration measurement device. They've come a long way, but they have acknowledged themselves it's very challenging. Other exfiltration studies have essentially called it mission impossible. We are just nowhere near ready for exfiltration to be into a regulation. You can't regulate theory. It's just not feasible. So that's the main comment. The other thing more globally, as Jared pointed out, as Diana, you pointed out in the presentation, our spills are dropping. And the 2006 WDR has been very successful in helping that. And there's words that are sprinkled into the informal draft, like ensure, every component, each, all. These kind of words are troubling. They can be trip ups for us from third-party litigation or from enforcement. And those need to be massaged out, and our coalition will certainly provide comments on that. Also, what we really want to do is keep those spills dropping. The threat to the environment from these large spills is definitely a threat. It's not from exfiltration or from small spills. So when we write in all these requirements that are perhaps to engage some of those agencies that haven't reported a spill in 5 years or aren't doing much, what you end up doing is you have all 1,200 enrollees, even those that are performing quite well, having to address all these written requirements and documentation and the alls and the everys, instead of putting people in the field and doing the O&M and maintenance work that you really want to see. So if this informal draft is intended to be slightly cost neutral, it's going to be pulling people out of the field to provide the paperwork documentation. If it's not intended to be cost neutral, it's going to be addition of staff to do paperwork. And I think what we should really be focusing on are what tune-ups do we need to do to reduce spills and continue that trajectory. So those are my comments for tonight, and thanks for staying on late and listening.
Thank you, Steve. Diana, did you want to speak to anything?
Yes, my thumbs are slow. All the everys and any's and stuff. That was actually a good comment, Steve. Thank you. And I can see where we need to put attention to that. I'd like to have further conversation with whatever groups are on understanding what is the extra paperwork on the portion of exfiltration that is identified to not be part of the order. And I think we as staff need to understand what the extra reporting is for the exfiltration, if that's what you were meaning. But I just want to say all your comments, they're very good, and we definitely do need to look at all the everys and alls.
Thanks, Diana. I wasn't referring to paperwork regarding exfiltration, although there certainly could be, depending on how that is interpreted. But I was speaking more on the additional budgetary requirements, additional documentation about coordination with stormwater agencies, which I think is a good thing. There's just so many little document this, document that, have a report for that, show how you prioritize. Some of that is already baked in to a well operating system, but they're going to have to comply with the order and document all this now. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. Each little one seems so harmless, but when you put them all together, it becomes a bit of a task.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Moving forward, I think we have enough, maybe possibly 2 or 3 more people. Ed Oyama. Is Ed still on the line?
Walter, I'm not sure if Ed is still on the line.
Okay.
Let me double check. If you maybe go on to the next person.
Okay, next person, Travis Fisher.
I don't think I see a Travis either.
Okay, next person, Cody Tompkins.
Looks like they're on the line. Should be unmuted.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are you guys doing today?
Great, thank you.
I wanted to say thank you very much to the board. I do know how labor intensive these orders are, and And I do believe that our existing order does need to be refreshed. However, I did want to make a couple of comments regarding specifically 5.5. You guys are spelling out the requirement of a grade 3 certified collection system maintenance operator. I know that this has kind of been talked about previously. And I would just recommend that the Regional Water Board look at maybe something a little bit more comprehensive to meet some of the state's needs, and look at maybe some of the wastewater classification requirements and certification requirements that are held from a wastewater standpoint. And then that way it meets the needs of all sizes of the collection systems. We have some very small collection systems, some very simple systems where a grade 3 might not be the most appropriate. Another thing to look at is, while Sacramento State University has a very good program, I think it's important for operators as they get into the field, that foundation of that program. However, it's not the same as a state water, or I'm sorry, as a California Water Environmental Association's program and their robust certification program. So I want to make sure that we look at the differences, which I've supplied email comments that kind of spell out some of the differences between those two. And also point out some of these systems that may not have the requirements. A grade 3 can take easily 4 years to obtain, 3 years if you have a degree. So I just want you guys to be aware of those, and I could provide that information. Grade 2 might be something a little bit more appropriate for some of the small systems. And that really applies to not only 5.5, but 5.20 and 6.2 as well. And we can submit some of the differences in the criteria for a certification program versus a Sacramento State program. That's all I really want to say at this point in time.
Hi, this is Diana. Cody, those are really good comments. And something we didn't consider about the scale of the grade, just like for wastewater treatment plant. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I come from a small disadvantaged community. We do require collection system certifications. I think it's critical for agencies to kind of raise the bar from an agency, and I'm speaking for myself, that received an NOV say a decade ago to now being, Mr. Fisher, before he retired, had come down an inspection at our facility, and I believe and would I would say that we have raised the bar at our agency, and so it can be done. The perspective has to be embraced from the lowest level to the highest level of the organization. And so I do believe in the certification programs, and I understand the order. I understand why we're revisiting it, but there, and I do appreciate the collaboration that we're having right now. Because there are definitely some concerns within this order. So I do appreciate the time, and I know we're definitely soaking it up today. So thank you again.
Great. And I just want to say, Cody, your input as working for a disadvantaged community, that is very important to us, and that we're going to look at your information. Also, we're working closely with Nora Duffy of CWEA, and she's helping us understand some of that same input. Wonderful.
Absolutely. If there's any follow-up communication, or you guys have questions, or you want to further this collaboration point, I provided my contact information. I emailed you guys. Feel free. I've been in the industry for quite some time, and as a grade 5 wastewater operator and a grade 4 collection system, I think I could bring some input, some valued input to the discussion, and feel free to reach out to me at any point.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thank you. Follow-up question in the comment box regarding Cody's statement, and comes from Sam Rose. Does the Water Board have data that suggests agencies that have certified staff perform better in regards to SSOs?
So thank you. The answer to that question is yes and no. We have graphed the information that we have from the questionnaires, the number of operators that enrollee has, and basically their performance. And it's hard to tell where a cutoff line is. In fact, when you look at the graph, it really probably starts peaking around 50, and then ironically, it starts going down around 75% operators. So that's when we realize that we don't have enough folks entering the information into, and that is a professional assumption. It's just hard for us to assume that too many operators makes a system operate worse. So yes, we have the data. We look, no, we quite have a good result that we can conclude from the data, even though we do see overall just more education and more expertise.
Thank you, Diana. Pardon me. I want to follow up with another comment, and then I'm going to call on Robin Morishita because she also wanted to voice some questions. But from Valerie Fanning states, it seems that the LRO discussion leaves out legal and financial aspects and responsibilities of that position, just focusing on operational.
That makes sense. That's a good comment. So that the LRO should or should not be focused just on operational. Either way, that's a good comment.
Thank you. And Robin Morishita, my apologies. I'm Walter and I get it all the time. So excuse me for that. I apologize. Can we unmute Robin? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no problem, Walter. You know, the brotherhood, right?
Exactly.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Diana. And thank you, Bergen. You know, that's how I used to sort my junk mail too. You know, if it says Ms., I throw it away. I just wanted to make a comment about the 20-year budget requirement. And I know, Diana, we talked to you previously, and that it's being considered to cut it down to a 10 or 5-year budget. But you know, even a 10 or 5-year budget is quite ominous for wastewater agency to come up with. I like to suggest that maybe a more realistic requirement would be like a 1 or 2 year budget, because you know, there's some agencies I understand out there that have 2-year budget cycles. We personally have a 1-year budget cycle, but to stretch that out even 5 years, you know, requires a lot of work. The other comment I had was on the CAFR that's required as part of the technical report. A lot of agencies, a CAFR is not required as part of an audit. That's an extra step. So if you're going to require that, you know, that's an extra step that an organization is going to have to do to come up with a CAFR when they do a technical report. And throughout the draft, you know, a comment was made about it being prescriptive. You know, for the SSS, I mean, for the SSMP, you know, there's statements about sewer rate schedules and structures, and you know, but no mention of like Proposition 218. You know, that you know, you have to go through your constituents, your residents, and if 50% of them say no, you can't raise your rates. I assume a disadvantaged community would have even a smaller population, so the number would be reduced. You know, you're asking for local funding sources, short, long-term O&M, CIP budgets, identifying financial strategy, identifying viable funding programs, and developing and submitting application packages for funding assistance. You know, I understand that, you know, you're looking at the financial side, and is an agency able to do that work. well, that sounds more like something you want to do, I would say on the enforcement side, like, why didn't you do this? And find out if they, were doing the right budgeting and all that. And when I say budgeting, I'm talking about the money side, not, which is totally different than having like a 5-year CIP where you have the projects listed with an estimated cost. Now, I don't know if that's what is required or it's thought of as a budget, but a budget for me is a lot different than that. And on my comment about the GIS and stormwater, yes, we do have our adjacent agency stormwaters like the city of Encinitas and city of Carlsbad, but Diane, built through like nurturing good relationships with our adjacent agencies. It wasn't built because we don't have that because it was directed as part of a WDR, so to speak. So I think maybe something to the effect that the agencies are encouraged, or enrollee is encouraged to nurture and build relationships with your adjacent agency so you can get this information, rather than saying to the sense you have to get these. And I think that's where the problem comes in, and where people are going to have a problem, because you can't direct another city or something to give you the information. But if you can build and nurture those relationships, you can get a lot of information from people that could help you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you working with us to get this WDR out.
Thank you, Robin. I want to say with a good level of confidence that 20 years is not going to stay in. And actually your comment about even 5 years is long has been echoed by others that are involved in the budgeting. So that's a good comment. I think one of the things I'm walking away, or a lot of us are walking away from here, is that a lot of the extra little things are adding up. And that's what I hear you say in regards to even the budget and so forth. So thank you for all your comments.
Thank you, Robin. I think we have time for one more. Let's see. Is Miguel Guerrero still on the line?
It does not appear so.
No. Okay. I'm gonna filter too. I can ask a question from the comments. If anybody that is still on the line that I haven't addressed would like to speak before we end, if you can just state that before the message is over. Give me one moment while So we'll go with the question. Miguel Medina states, please consider counting only Category 1 spills for an agency to be eligible for the reduced reporting. An agency may have 70 to 80% Category 3 spills that are less than 50 gallons.
So basically, Walter, is the comments implying that, if there's an agency that has good performance, but then unfortunately they have one Category 1 spill of, that makes it to a water US, that discounts them?
From what I read, and Miguel, you is on the line. If Miguel Medina, you'd like to clarify your question, but I took it to mean that to only count category 1 spills. And that maybe they have a high volume of category 3 spills that they are unable to update in the reporting.
I see.
Good afternoon. This is Miguel Medina, City of Vacaville. So my concern is that we do have many category 3 spills, and 70 to 80% of those spills are below 50. And it appears that if we do not, we're trying to make changes to our root control program and things like that, and our CCTV program. But at this point, it seems like over the past couple of years, we've risen in terms of the events, spill events. So my concern is that if we keep doing these category 3s that are less than 50, then we would not be able to meet the reduced reporting program.
I see. And thank you for that clarification. Yes, we do realize that if this reduced reporting incentive is going to be valuable, that our criteria probably does need to be widened. So we understand what you're saying, and we would want an agency that does have good performance, yet may have a category 1 spill to still be allowed to consider the reduced reporting. I also understand, since you're in Vacaville, that your system's probably in much more closer proximity to water bodies than maybe other sanitary sewer agencies. So you're being able to even limit the category 1 spills. That's good success right there.
That is correct. So yes, we have had category 1 spills, and I believe over from 2006 through today, I think it's been like maybe 6 category 1 spills. So, but we are addressing those issues, and but we would also like to participate in the reduced reporting if possible.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was a very good comment.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Gergagan again. It is 5:01. We are over the after-hour session for questions and comments. So unfortunately, that's all the time we had today, but we do have the April 16 workshop, which is a repeat of the information provided today. If we did not have an opportunity to get to your question or comment, we will try coordinating and make sure that you guys are first in line for the April 16 workshop if you will be in attendance. But with that, that's all the time we had. Thank you for everyone who had the time to participate today and for staying after hours with us. We appreciate all the feedback a lot and just your time in general. With that, enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Bye.
And thank you, Gur, and thank you, Walter.
Bye, everyone.
Okay.